Is it on?
We're good. Okay, nice.
All right, I guess we're on. Welcome back to our live. It's been a couple weeks since we've been here, but we're excited about this topic, predators, pests, and insects. And the reason why this has kind of come up is because no matter where you live, you have a problem with any of those ones, really. And for the people sometimes fear predators for the lack of knowledge. So talking about, our experience with predators and stuff can really ease the fear of moving to rural communities, because a lot of times that is a stumbling block for people, is like they're afraid of, bears, coyotes, different things like that. And so we're just going to share our experiences, and, it's really not as scary as you might think it is. So what would be the first kind of predator we're going to talk about tonight?
What's the most feared, do you think?
I don't know. So I can share an experience, not my personal experience, but
that's a good story to start with.
So there's a lady that I met, and she has children, and they're looking to move to the country. This was a few years ago. And we were visiting with them and a friend of ours, and they were so afraid of animals. I have never seen anything like it in my life. I wouldn't have believed it if I seen it. But we heard coyotes. We were in a house in the basement, windows shut, everything. We heard coyotes just like howling away. And they were so terrified. They locked themselves in a room. They literally thought they'd break through the window. And like these people, like they're from the GTA area. They don't it's not that they don't know. It's just that they have a lack of knowledge about these things. Like coyotes are not going to come break through your window and come in. But if you don't know, how are you ever going to overcome those fears? So it's just a really good example there. And I mean, we have coyotes, we hear them a lot, and we never see them. So I don't know what your guys' experience with coyotes are.
So I think the first year when we heard them often.
We hear them.
And the first year we heard them often, we were a little more concerned. But we've, now we're at the point where we hear them and we're kind of like, oh, you almost know exactly what field they're in when you know the noise.
Yeah, you pinpoint.
They do get brave during certain times of the year where they come very close to people. Like we had an instance this summer, late in the summer, seems to be when they're more active, up at a neighbor's place. And I went to check on him because I knew he was up there by himself, and you heard them right there, and we had cattle there as well. Mm-hmm. So, but that wasn't something.
I chased one too.
Yeah, and you chased one with the commander out of a field. And we have one, the three-legged guy, we call him. He's got four legs, but he limps around. And I think he got into it with the horses one day and come out on the wrong end. And really, he's never bothered anything else after that. So for us, there's no point in me hunting him or getting rid of him, because you worry about something else moving in. But as for them attacking people, or even the presence of having our dogs here, you see a lot on social media where people are like, oh, the coyotes are going to come and take your dog and your baby and whatever else. Well, our dogs are just little keelers, little tiny cattle dogs.
They look like coyotes.
Yeah, a little bit, eh?
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I could see that.
They got a little bit of dingo and that in them naturally,
yeah.
So.
But when the dogs are out in the yard, they're not scared of when they hear the coyotes that close, and the coyotes don't come here because of the presence of having our dogs.
It's true.
I'm not worried about them bothering us, but I think a lot of people, that's their biggest fear, like you said, is coyotes or bears.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say bears, because even me, I was still, where was it? When we lived in town.
Oh,
but it was we still had bush. I think we had a 1 acre bush lot, and then behind was quite a bit of bush too, and
But it was all blueberry patch. We knew there was
patches aside,
bears everywhere. Yeah.
So we had coyotes there still too, even though we were in town technically.
Yeah.
We had coyotes there, we had foxes, and there was definitely bears too. And I can remember being scared of that stuff. Not going out at night. I wouldn't go behind the shed, or certain dark areas you just don't go into. And now, I don't know what it is, but now I'm not
90% of our 90% of our work we just do at night, because it's cooler at night. There's less wind at night. Yeah. You know what I mean? And we run off headlamps and lights most of the time, but usually because the rest of the day you're doing something else, and then doing the evening chores, especially in the summertime. For us, it's cooler. I don't know if you guys do the same, but I mean, you worry a little bit about predators because you can't see exactly
It's
what's
true.
out there.
Yeah,
But
I'm a
as
little
you-
more leery of going out to the barn at night because it's really right pushed up against the woods.
Well,
right?
that's the thing, right? For us, at least we have a buffer. We have field
Yeah.
behind the barn and everything. So you kind of have, like,
Yeah.
a line of sight, I guess, makes the difference, maybe. That's what it is. I don't know. But
I can share an experience, though. I'm not proud of this experience, but so it was, I think, within maybe our first year.
It would have been before a year because it was
Yeah.
2017, around the summer or autumn.
So we have a friend of ours that had sheep, and I don't know, I can't remember the reason, but she was looking for a spot to kind of house a couple sheep. She was selling a few. I think that's what it was. And so we had a couple ewes, and then we had a ram. And it was just a temporary thing. It was during the winter because we were feeding them some cedar and stuff that we had cut. I remember that. So we had them during the winter. So it's darker earlier. And so anyways, because they aren't mine and we didn't have them long, I kind of, I guess, forget that they're there. But I was heading out to our garage because that's where our freezer is. And, I was getting stuff ready for dinner. And there's a good enough space. I don't know how much feet from the house to the barn or the garage.
Approximately 100 feet.
Yeah, so there's not really any light. When it's dark here, it's dark. Like, there's no light.
just
It's
stars.
just dark. So I was heading out to the garage to grab something for dinner. And I'm going out, and I'm a little eerie. I take the dog with me because, I'm afraid of that kind of thing. But anyways, I'm not even at the garage door yet, and all I hear is, I'm like, serious. I'm like looking, I'm like, what is that? Like, no kidding. Okay, I'm coming from a place that, from the city that doesn't have any of these animals. I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking, I know that's not a bear. And I know that's not a coyote. I'm like, what in the world is that? Like a Bigfoot or something? I thought it was like is this some sort of Bigfoot? Anyway, I'm like, I don't know what exists back here because I haven't been back here long enough. But I got to the garage real quick. Anyways, I got my little flashlight and I can't see anything. I'm aiming it at the barn and the woods. I'm not seeing anything. So anyways, I get the dog and we go back, head towards the house. And I'm like doing the flashlight, and again it's like, I'm like terrified. My heart is racing. I go in the house. I'm like, Jay, there's a wild animal outside, but I'm like, it's not an animal that I know. Anyways, come to find out, we go and investigate, and it's the ram. And it was just,
no.
I'm like, most people think that sheep will, and I'm like,
yeah, no.
they don't do that in real life. Anyways, that was my most fearful experience of being out here.
Coming in and be like, I heard this funny sound outside. I had no idea.
Oh
what
my
it was."
goodness.
Oh man, it was intense.
So that's
but,
me. Like, as brave as I think I am now, there was one day I was feeding and I was in the barnyard and I don't know what I did. I had the dogs with me, which is, the dogs always come with you because they're just sacrificial at this point. Like,
it's true.
that's why the dogs are there. Oh, that you can outrun them. I mean, I probably couldn't outrun him, but it's, yeah. So
Poor Mo, she's going to sacrifice her little baby.
you poor thing. Your sacrifice.
Oh my.
Yeah. So
Get down.
anyways, I don't know, the dogs were in front of me, and all of a sudden I kind of heard something coming up behind me. I'm like, what is that? Oh my god. And they're like, you've only got seconds at that point to be like, ugh. And I'm like, do you want to turn around? Turn around, and I see this black thing. And I'm like, oh, like, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, okay, well, where's the dogs? No, dogs are in front of me. What is that? And anyway, so I turned back around at that point to be like, okay, I've got to face whatever this thing is because it's right behind me. And I thought for sure it was a bear because when you look and you can see over top of it, but it's this black thing. Anyways, it ended up being one of our little calves, our black calves, had gotten out, and I guess he heard me because he was out in the field. He heard me and was like, "Oh, perfect! Someone's here to come save me and put me back in with everybody else." But he snuck up behind me. My God, my heart jumped.
I know the feeling. I
She
tell you.
came in the
I
house
did.
and she was almost in tears. She was that scared.
I'm like, no, I remember seeing the dogs in front of me.
It was late at night too, Jenny. Like
was black.
it was pitch black.
Yeah.
We were doing a final check-in because we had all the calves separated from their mums, so we knew that they were trying to get out. So it was late, like
It was
just before bed, kind of late, like 11 o'clock or whatever. And
Yeah, so you're half asleep while you're trying to do all
you were
all
up
this
almost
chores.
all night after that.
It literally scared the living crap out of me.
Yeah.
But it's, you know what? That's one thing that people don't realize is that here is very, very dark.
It's so dark.
Yeah.
We have one of the best areas for stargazing.
Yeah.
And that's like a big tourist thing here. And you don't really realize just how dark it is until, like you're kind of like on the outskirts of town. And like you can go up the hill and you can kind of look down and see Denby, basically where we are.
Yeah.
And you can see the lights. And you can see the, what do they call it? They call it light pollution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even when we lived in town, I was in a different town across from you, but I could literally see, because we lived near an airport, I could see the pollution from I guess your city technically. So that's one thing, is that people don't realize how dark it is here.
It is
Like,
dark.
It is black. So.
And that is again the fear for lack of knowledge, because
Yeah.
if you'd have known it was a cow and if I would have known it was a ram, we wouldn't be so afraid.
No.
No.
But it's one of those things.
We've
It gives a good laugh.
had that happen
Oh,
a few
yeah.
times. Like it got me once too, because my biggest thing is we have pig feed, and you guys know too, and a lot of the viewers that watch, I'm sure you guys have livestock feed around. That brings in
Oh yeah.
Other-
animals, right?
Yeah.
Especially certain times of year, like just at the beginning of spring or coming on late fall. I worry most about running into a bear in the barn, because then it's not like he's going to hurt me on purpose, but I might be in between him and his escape route, right?
That's true.
New
So-
fear unlocked. Thank you.
Yeah. We've got, at any given time, there's 2,000 pounds of pig feed in the barn or whatever, right? So it's not like it's a, it's a smorgasbord for an animal. But I had went in late fall, and it was late at night and it was dark, and I had come through the one little doorway where the pig area was, out to where the pig feed is, and the barn was full of hay because we had been stocked for winter. So there's only like a 2-foot aisle between the hay and where I had to walk. And of course, I didn't have my light because I was just doing a late evening check-in on the pigs, and I was letting the dog out, go to the washroom. So I was walking up to the pig feed to get my sows a treat, because I always give them a little extra. Anyway, so I said, yeah, I'll be right back, and come through. And all of a sudden, I bumped into something, and it pushed me up against the hay bale, and it was like large and heavy. And I'm thinking, oh my God, it's a bear. This is it. Like, this is my fear unlocked. This is exactly what I didn't want to happen. And then I heard moo. And it was George, our bull.
George.
Our 1,000-pound bull somehow managed to jump from the bottom of the barn through the hay hatch into the upper loft, but he was too fat to turn around to get back down. So he was like, help me. And I had to lead him back down around. But my heart and soul left my body for a moment before I figured out what was going on. Like, oh my God.
It doesn't help that everything that comes out is always black.
Yeah, George is,
It couldn't have been a white cow, that you'd see. Right?
George is a lowline Angus Dexter bull with, probably a 3-foot horn span, and he's 1,000 pounds, right? He's a big baby, but at the same time, it was a large object that I couldn't see that had kind of pinned me. But for predator wise, like, that's my biggest one, is just worrying about being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Same as it's probably the same as you guys. You don't want to be in between
Oh yeah.
something.
I know,
Especially
like-
a mother and its cub. type
Yeah,
thing, or,
that's right.
Yeah.
I mean, my only experience with a bear. So one, I already knew is anytime you go near berries, there's any chance of being a bear there.
Yeah.
So I'm like already on high alert.
Yeah.
We went berry picking, down the like logging roads and stuff.
Yeah.
And so usually when I go berry picking, I usually, let the horn go a few times before I get out and start picking.
Yeah.
It lets them know that I'm there and they can run away, and I'm cool with that. But this one time we were actually walking down some of the trails, and we were walking near a raspberry patch, and all we heard was like a gruff, like a big woof, and I knew it was a bear. So all we did is we took a few steps backwards, and we gave it 5-10 minutes. We walked up towards those berries again, and he was nowhere in sight. So he really just warned us, I'm here, but he wanted to get way away as fast as he could. Like he didn't want to come near us.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's really been my only experience with a bear, and he hasn't tried to come after us. He just wanted to get away from us. But
Your brother almost got one.
Yeah. My brother, a few. We've had a few, but again,
Most times they don't.
most of the times when I've run into a bear, they turn and go the other way. And I think that's something that people don't realize because they always think, well, bear's going to maul you or whatever. But I mean, most of the time here, at least, we have black bears. We don't have grizzlies or Kodiaks where we live. So it's black bears, and most of the time they're fearful of humans. And we have had very seldom have we had an encounter here with a bear. I mean, we've seen the one. We did have one became a nuisance, not so much a predator for us. But we can talk about that when we get to pests.
oh, okay.
So we'll put that in that category. And I think the one predator that we've dealt with that was really a concern for us was when we had our chicks, our poultry, our growers, right, our meat birds.
Yeah.
We had them in the horse trailer, and that's how we start them because it's secure. Nothing can get in. We can control the airflow and the temperature and keep them warm and dry and safe.
Okay.
And one morning, I went outside after Jenny had, and there was a marten. So like we have like pine marten here,
yeah.
and he was right at the corner of the house, right near the horse trailer. He couldn't get in, but he was there, right? And pine marten can be quite vicious. Like they would have wiped us out if they would have got in,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So that was something that wasn't high on my worrying about predators. That pine marten wasn't up there on the list, but it certainly was that
And
day.
it's one of the smaller predators.
Yeah.
And probably like the one that you do have to worry about the most compared to a bear or coyote with
Weasels.
livestock.
Anybody with the chickens, I don't know if this is an issue for you guys. So right now, we actually have a little weasel that...
Yeah, I'm going to call him Frank.
Yeah, he stays
I don't
in
know
the
his
barn.
name, but yeah.
But we only ever seen him in the winter. I've never seen
Yep.
him in the summer. But again, for us, for our livestock, it's not an issue because we don't house chickens over the winter. We have everything else is bigger than it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that in a way that this weasel becomes a little bit of a blessing, that it kind of goes after the mice, which
Well,
are the pests,
He's gotten rid of a lot of our chipmunk
and the
problem.
chipmunks.
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah.
I'm in no rush to get rid of him. So in a way, he's a major predator and a very large concern for someone that had chickens or whatever. But for us, that predator's doing a job of a cat that we don't have cats here. So
Because another predator eats them.
yeah, because coyotes take the cats out. So.
Wow.
But so we see no point in getting rid of him. But we haven't had an issue with him because we use poultry netting as electronetting as our number one predator control is electronet for us.
Okay.
So we had an experience. I've told you this story before. I've talked about it on Facebook or whatever too. But I was in the washroom one morning and our bathroom window was overlooking where our chickens were, and they were in poultry netting. And there was a coyote trying to get into the poultry netting. And he kept going in and getting zapped and going back and checking other directions.
Wow.
So I watched him for a minute and I thought, well, I can go get the gun and get rid of him, but he can't get in. He's not doing anything. So sure enough, I just said, Jenny, look, there's a coyote going after the chickens. And he couldn't get in and turned off and left. And we
Wow.
have yet to lose a single chicken to coyote
predator.
or any predator because of the electronet.
Electronet. Cool.
Yeah. It's enough of a zap, it's 8,000, 9,000 volts.
Wow.
Now,
Yeah.
I don't know that would keep a weasel out, but
That's true.
part of that is that where we house them. So, one conversation I had with another young couple that came and got feed off of us was they had a raccoon that had gotten, they assume it was a raccoon that got into their coop, got quite a bit of their chickens. The thing that I said is that, well, we don't run into that because we're constantly moving our coop, if you want to call it that, right? Like our chicken setup gets moved, and it's also in a field, so there's nothing around it, right?
Where they can hide.
Yeah.
Where they can hide. So, I mean...
And they're never there long enough to dig under.
No, exactly. So the predators can't really find your weakest point. Because it's constantly moving, it's constantly changing. So when you have these traditional coops that are stagnant and always there, the predators have time to actually go through and find those weak points.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it was kind of a neat note. And like in this case, that weasel, well, if you watch the weasel, it likes to go from little spots to like, what, from shed
to shed.
From shed to shed, basically, or, there might be a pile of wood or something.
Yeah.
So there's only little footprints in between, and they're quickly moving between different objects. So obviously, for it to be out in an open field, it's not that's not what it wants to do.
That's not what it wants
right?
protection.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, I mean, its natural predator would probably be a hawk that would come down and get it.
Which we do have.
Yeah.
Which we do have, but we've not had issues.
Oh, that's a great story. Sorry, because I want to talk about your predator experience because I think it's a good one to share. Like what can happen with chickens and that, and but before we go to that, I want to talk about hawks.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about my grandma when she came up.
Oh my goodness, yes.
So my she's hilarious. She came up with her little dog. I don't know what his name's Pepper, but I don't know what kind of breed he is. He's just a tiny little...
It's like a size of a Chihuahua,
Yeah.
but it's got long hair, but it's not a Yorkie. It's like this weird dog. I don't know what it is. It's cute.
So he was running around. We went for a big walk around the farm off leash. The dog's never been off leash before because they live in the city.
Yeah.
So she lives outside of Toronto, right, in suburbs out there. So she was terrified about a raven or a hawk coming to take the dog away. And she's like, oh no, it's going to get it. I see it happen on the news and this and that. I said, the chances of that are so small out here. To see a hawk or a raven go after an object like a dog or one of our chickens, it's too much risk for them. There's enough other stuff that they eat that we haven't had these issues yet. We have open air coops for our chickens, right? Open air coops and that you can see our setups, and we have yet to have lost that way.
Wow.
Yeah. But I just thought it was funny because she just didn't have the knowledge to know like your 8-9 pound dog is not going to get scooped up by a hawk just walking around the farm, right?
Yeah, especially with our other dogs around too, right? So
but it was funny. Yeah,
it was hilarious.
So we've actually we have two, I guess, predator experiences, but our first one was, I want to say, a year before this one anyway, this recent one. And I think, I don't know if it was the spring or the fall. But basically, you're right. They want protection. So we lost one of our partridge chanticleers.
Yeah.
And
I remember that.
It was hidden in our currant bushes. But we found out later that the predator was definitely a hawk because it came back.
Yeah.
And it stayed at the top of one of our pine trees. So it was coming back because I think it wanted more, obviously.
Yeah.
But it had... We could see the feathers and where it came from, and it actually came from it was a pine tree, right, or a spruce.
Spruce or pine tree, yeah.
And it was obviously stalking in amongst that and came down, and I think it took its head and stuff. But then you could see the feathers were stuck on the tree. They were stuck on the. So it definitely didn't do it because at this time they were free ranging our birds.
Yeah, I remember.
And it never. It didn't attack them in the middle of the grass like the field.
Yeah.
It did it right under a huge pine tree.
Yeah.
So that was our one experience. And we've had birds for about 5 or 6 years, chickens. And we've never had like big predator issues. That was, I think, our first one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we lost one hen.
one chick.
Wasn't it one
that
chick, one
year
hen?
after,
Yeah.
I think, or like in the when we
Yeah.
So yeah, we actually did. You're right. We lost another.
and that could have been a skunk
I
or a
want to say
raccoon,
like
I'm not sure.
yeah, I don't know. Maybe it was like a 6 or 8 week old chick outside, and it had dug underneath.
Oh,
So my
okay.
thought was that, probably like a fox or something
Yeah.
dug underneath, took it out. We never did find anything. And then this one that just happened this winter, just after Christmas,
Lily.
where we had a predator come in and literally took our whole flock of
Yeah.
partridge chanticleers. And it was terrible. You walked in and it killed them all. Now, 3 of them had their stomachs eaten and the rest of them were just dead. So,
Yeah.
but I think, so there's a few things that it could be. My first instinct was a weasel. But I know typically, I think weasels, they just kill for blood, don't they?
Yeah,
Yep.
usually it's a neck.
So the fact that the stomach was eaten, I'm like, okay, it might not be a weasel. And then I thought of a raccoon, but the small, like the hole where it got in, I think was a bit too small. So the only
Could be
other
a
thing
Pine marten.
it could, it could be. But I'm thinking more like a fisher or a fox. But I don't know if a fox would climb up that.
I have no. Well, they. I mean, if
They can climb
they're hungry
actually
enough,
pretty
you know.
decently.
Yeah.
Because
Lily.
the odd thing about our barn is we had our barnyard mix. I don't know if you can hold that for a moment.
Lily.
Bed.
Our barnyard mix is off on the back end of our barn, and then we had our chanticleers on the front end of our barn. The strange thing is, there was a gap, I want to say like about this big, that something could have got through to the other side. There's like a gap, straight up in like vertical.
But it's fenced on both sides.
No, so
Oh, okay.
inside the barn we have this door that opens up where we can get into the barnyard mix.
Yes.
There's a gap about like this big where an animal could have gotten in and killed them all. My thought is it was too big of an animal that it couldn't get in, which why I'm eliminating. I think that it was
Yep.
obviously a weasel. I mean, so I don't really know what it is, but that was our first real experience with having such a great loss. But we have seen fishers, and fishers is one of the things I was a little nervous about when I moved to the country because I don't know much about fishers. People
Oh, me
say
neither. I don't
they're
know
up
much.
in the trees and
Yeah.
they jump down and they get the deer and all this stuff. This is what, because my uncle used to actually hunt. He used to catch.
Trap them usually.
Trap them.
Yeah, a lot of people trap.
So like I've seen stuffed ones like in his house and stuff, but I didn't have a lot of knowledge. But the only fishers that I've actually physically seen are in broad daylight and crossing the road when I'm
Yeah.
driving,
Yeah.
and like right around our house. But I've never actually seen them on my property or near my chickens. So I don't, like, that's another thing. Like, I don't know much about them, and I think that's why I'm
Yeah.
a little weird about them, because I don't really know much about
Sometimes
those.
it's hard to determine exactly what animal did it.
It
But then you
is.
gotta wonder too, like, so realistically, does it matter?
Not
right?
really.
Like,
You
does
got to
it-
fix your
Also,
holes.
like,
That's
you gotta-
it, yeah.
like, so I mean, even if you're going from
Yeah.
like the size of a weasel all the way up to a wolverine or bear, there's a big difference in size, but at
Mm-hmm.
the same time, they can still do just about the same damage.
Yes.
In the end, you basically have to go for the smallest object, like the smallest predator, and like fence for that or something like
It's
that.
true.
But,
Yeah, so that's
yeah, as much as we wonder kind of what it was, or
It's really you're speculating if you don't see any footage or
yeah,
pictures. Or,
yeah, like you could see prints and stuff like that. Like that's kind of the nice thing about winter time.
It is.
Well,
You
that's
have a better idea.
Well, we couldn't even see any prints. Like we could see.
they were
something, but
sunken like
were-
deep down. So I'm like, it had to have been something heavier than a weasel,
yeah,
because it's just a hole.
yeah.
But
But we kind of have the luxury of seeing what's around the farm
Yeah.
because we have dead stock, right? Like we process a lot of our own food for ourselves. Like
Yeah.
we did a beef this year, and the entrails go on the compost pile, which isn't a whole nother conversation, but I mean that helps the compost pile go. The manure pile, it gets added to it. We churn it regularly. Same as our chickens. All the dead stock from the chickens, all the leftovers go onto that pile and get churned. And then the predators come in and they go to dig through it to find the manure pile. But that gives us an opportunity to see what's there.
Yeah.
So we have fox that makes a trail up my skidoo path all winter long to the manure pile. And we have weasels and
Really?
whatever, and we can see the tracks, and then you kind of know what's there. And it allows you to kind of keep an eye on your predator situation to see what's around.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have cattle with horns for the previous years. Now we went to belted Galloways, so we only have 2 cows with horns left. George is kind of useless. I don't think he's much for predator control. He's too lazy
The
to do
horns
anything.
don't really make a difference
but-
anyways when it comes to predator control.
No,
Realistically.
no, they don't. But it,
Yeah.
you know,
We still are careful when it comes to
calving season.
so certain seasons where we're gonna have
Yeah.
babies and stuff like that.
True.
Then that's when we kind of decide, okay,
Yeah.
do we take some of that stuff? And we have another lot across the highway, and that highway is a strong enough highway where there's enough
Yeah.
traffic that it kind of
Separates the predators.
Yeah.
There's not a lot that crosses.
That's true.
so
We take certain times of the year, if
We'll
we
take it over there.
got babies or we still have chickens or whatever, the leftovers and remains won't go onto that pile. It'll go on a compost pile across the highway.
yeah.
Oh, cool.
So we get to kind of
Move it around.
dictate it based on that.
The other thing that you hit on with that is when we are having calving season, we just planned calving season out. We know when our cows were bred. We know when calving season is going to start. We're picking the pastures that they're going to be in where there's less chances of the predators coming to them, right? So the less, they're in the less remote areas of the farm.
Less wildlife traffic.
Yeah.
If you want to call it that.
Yeah, and same as our pigs. We don't have our sows farrow out on pasture. We have them in the winter pen, which is the winter pen for the cattle. So around the barnyard, they have access to underneath the barn to have their piglets, and that way we can monitor them closely and keep an eye out for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's really when our piglets are super susceptible the first 2 to 3 days. After that, they're so fast, it's lucky if we can catch them.
It's true.
But
It's true.
you guys were shocked. Eh?
I
Like,
know they're
yeah,
fast.
Yeah,
they
they are.
come out almost running, them little buggers. But
There's
and then our chicks say Jenny come up with the horse trailer idea, and that has alleviated the issues.
not having to have them indoors for
Yes.
murder, which is nice.
That is nice.
Because they can 100 of them can smell.
Oh,
good.
they're awful stinky.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They are definitely strong. So, but one of the things that we did initially when we first got our farm, there was someone giving away spent hens.
Oh yeah, that's right.
They were actually gonna just basically get rid of them. So we figured, well, I mean, we went and caught whatever we could catch. Had a good laugh at that. I brought some friends from basically the city, and
Yeah.
they're hilarious trying to catch these chickens.
Watching them catch chickens was the funniest thing I've ever seen.
Oh yeah.
Like chicken chasings. You know how like
Because they're basically like free range, but then there's like a little
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that might be good for
Way
the
to go,
dog.
Kendra. You brought
Yeah.
out Rusty.
Uh-oh.
uh-oh.
All right, let's hide Rusty.
get back in there.
Come on, Mo.
Yeah, so anyways, our friends caught them with us, and we weren't even living here yet.
Oh.
So we basically released them on the farm. They had free range of whatever they wanted to do. It was their own, like they had to source a shelter, and there's plenty of spots. Like the
Oh,
barn
yeah.
The barns, the
fully
sheds,
open,
and everything.
like they could have gotten away in certain spots. We didn't lose any for like months.
Probably
Wow.
4 or 5 months.
Until
Yeah, right until the end
it
of
started
fall.
to get right into the end of the fall. That's
Yeah.
when we started to lose some.
That's, yeah.
So it gave us an idea of what our predators were going to be like. What else? There was also
So
like, you could tell 'cause
we
some
lost-
went away.
We lost what, 3 that got taken away,
One
and
got-
we
yeah, I think maybe it was 3 got taken away. There was one
Yeah.
when we brought our horse up, and he was quite upset that day because it was it was killed out like right out front. So something different got that one because it didn't take it.
yeah. So it gave us an idea of like what kind of we had, and then the fact that the horse was spooked, we figured it was coyote. But then after
Versus
that,
a fox. I think
Yeah.
the fox would have taken them.
yeah,
It was
Yeah,
my
I
guess.
think so.
Yeah, I think we got a little bit of snow too at the time, so we could kind of see a little bit of footprint. Because it would have been like late November.
Yeah, and I think doing it that way was nice because those hens were destined for nothing, and
Yeah,
we had kept them for the whole summer. We got them laying again. We had fed them, or we experimented with our food, and then we moved them to a friend of ours' house. Come fall, when
The
we
ones
started
that
to
still
lose
survive,
some, we said,
yeah.
okay, we lost 3, so we'll take the remainder and we give them to a friend. And they're still laying for her, and they're almost 8 now, and they were just a barnyard mix.
Just,
Yeah.
yeah.
So they're almost 8, I guess. So it
That's
worked out
cool.
okay.
Yeah.
She doesn't get an egg
That's a
every
long
day, but
lifespan, though, for even just
Well, even the
regular-
laying,
Yeah.
you know.
and laying, yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Wow.
It was really neat. So, like, there's ways of kind of determining
What
your,
predators? you
rather than losing your good fancy chickens that you're going to invest in first and whatnot. Like,
True.
I mean, we took what's really a byproduct at this point. It was
yeah.
a
They were
byproduct of
5
eggs.
years old at that point, or 6 years old. So it was time, for them to leave because that place they produce eggs and they get new layers every year.
Yeah.
So and then these ones were 4 or 5 years old because they get them from a production farm. So this was like the third farm for those poor chickens, but and we had seen tons on Kijiji that were going for free too, spent hens.
Yeah, there's lots of
Yeah.
stunt hens you can do that with.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not nice, could be nice. It depends if they survive or not. In our case, we found out that we didn't have as much predator problems
Yeah.
as like some of the other farms because a lot of like across the highway where our other property is, right beside is another farm, and they had sheep, and they had told us that like the wolves are really bad, like they
Wow.
literally come in, take the sheep, drag them right over top of the fence. I'm watching it as it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean,
Wow.
you have that like, oh wow, okay, and then you have another farm that hasn't been used in how many years,
15 years.
right? That's right across from us that backs onto Bush and Crown,
Lily.
and I mean, like now I know for sure that there's predators there because we rode all summer and I could see there was a wolf track that's the same size as my horse hoof print.
Wow.
Like, and and it kept coming closer. I could see it tracking our trail every time we go twice a week to go down that same road. You can kind of see. So, I mean, there is predators here. It just happens to be that they don't really touch this farm because of the way it's subdivided off of like a different highway and just the
Well, I
general
think
traffic.
the general traffic being we're on the farm all the
Us
time.
too, yeah.
We're
True.
around the farm moving the animals, and predators don't want to be around you
Yeah.
for people
Yeah.
anyway. So
That's
we
right.
We're constantly
Yeah.
fencing.
Yeah.
Like,
True.
The way we
it's probably the
do
same as you
everything.
guys in your coop. Like your predator load around that house before you bought it was probably a lot higher than what it is now.
Yeah.
I doubt you have raccoons there every night or whatever else.
I don't think
right?
I've ever seen a raccoon at our property.
Yeah,
We did have some. Rob got rid of those at 4 o'clock in the morning.
yeah.
That was fun.
In
But I
daylight.
will say, having a dog, it is a huge part of keeping them at bay.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, I'm just having the dog around all the time and outside, and because I mean, when our chickens were taken, it's usually in the winter when we're not out much,
Yeah,
and the dog is usually in the house.
yeah.
But
Exactly.
yeah,
So I love the winter. I'm outside all the time, the winter time. But
Okay, I was gonna say
yeah,
we need to. Is anyone here?
yes, there's
anyone
there's
on?
Yeah, we got a few people here. So earlier I asked the question, what kind of predators have they all experienced where they live? I believe it's Caitlin or Caitlin.
Yeah. Caitlin Family Farm.
Yes. Once they came across a possum. that
Oh.
got her.
oh,
Awesome.
possum. Yeah,
I think
She
do we
hates
actually-
those
I think
things.
might happen
I
here,
think
too.
we do. I don't know.
I think
we're a little
I'm
north.
sure we have them.
not necessarily
but, like,
us, but like I think they're in Southern Ontario.
Yeah.
Southern
Okay.
Ontario.
Okay.
Mick Vicker, 96, wrote lots of coyotes and a weasel that got 14 to 16 chickens.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah, weasels are bad for chickens.
oh, yeah.
Oh, big time.
Yeah. I've been chased by a weasel before as a kid.
Mm.
That was not fun.
Forbes?
Forbes or Four
Bears?
Four Bears? Homestead?
Well, Forbes.
Forbes.
There is a Forbes in Pembroke.
I can't pronounce it. I apologize. But they wrote raccoons are a problem there in New York, but they've trapped several of them. Daytime predators aren't really a problem thanks to our guard goose.
Yeah.
Nice.
No,
I've thought about getting a
Oh.
goose.
So they comment down further saying that they've watched their goose beat the heck out of a fox.
I would believe that.
Yeah,
I've
I do,
heard
yeah.
about
Yeah,
that.
we had a pet Canadian goose at one point.
They're vicious.
It was not friendly to people if he had who he liked and who he
Certain
didn't.
people he liked and other ones he did not.
Yeah.
No, I've thought about like, should I get a goose? But then I think when I was researching, they're more for like airborne predators,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like your hawks, your eagles,
Because
your
they'll watch.
owls.
You can watch. I used to have Muscovy ducks as a kid,
Yeah.
as a teenager.
They were
And
good
you could
too.
see where they would be like think, and they'd turn their head and they'd look up in the sky, and you're like, oh, okay, what are they looking at? Oh,
Yeah.
there it is.
Those Muscovies were
And
good.
they were vicious too. Those Muscovies.
They were, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking, I was like, maybe I should
I
just
can't
get like
imagine a
a
goose.
duck or
Yeah.
a goose.
Yeah.
The
A goose would
Muscovies
be-
are really neat because they have like such good personalities. Other than when they get like
Yeah.
kind of mean.
I hear-
They're
I've heard,
really
though,
big. They're
They
That
are
they
big.
can
big.
really, like if you have one, they really kind of, if you have like chickens or if you've got goats, like they kind of like take on as part of the family. Like they,
Yeah.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
I've heard that, but I haven't ever experienced it. But
They could.
yeah, I mean, I've heard donkeys, right? Donkeys
Yeah.
are supposed to be
Oh,
good
yeah.
for predators. So there are other animals out there that could be good for your
Ponies.
Jeffrey does
Jeffrey.
not.
Oh, he'll beat coyotes up. Well, I know that's why we have I call him the three-legged coyote. That's why he's limping. Is because
He doesn't like dogs. So
I think Jeffrey
like,
put the boots to him. That's what happened there.
yeah, because he was with cattle before we got him, and I think
Yeah.
that's what he was doing. Was
He was
basically
predator
safeguarding
control.
them.
Wow.
But I know because he'll kind of once in a while he'll go after the dogs.
Yeah.
Which I mean is fair game because the dogs aren't allowed to go in that pen, but they still do, and so
Yeah.
I don't correct it. But
The raccoons is a good topic too. Like we had them this year.
we
And
had
as,
them after chicken processing.
yeah, and they're a nuisance. Like they're in the garbages. They come in the middle of the night. They keep you up all night because they're in
They're
everything.
quite chatty too. Like they aren't
Yeah.
quiet about things. They're very chatty when they get into stuff, eh?
Yeah. So we'll say at daybreak. One day I got I had enough. It was enough. I was a week with no sleep, and I was like, okay, that's enough. So, I got rid of two or one. I think it was
I
one,
think it was one. But,
and
I mean, they also got rid of the second one because it never came back.
never came back, and that was it. But that was a week of a nightmare. In the back of the truck, over the vehicles, in the feed bags, ripping through garbages, and they're a nightmare. And they do kill chickens too.
Yeah.
So we hadn't had that problem, but I was like, hey Jenny, they're at the point where they're like, oh, I can hear them on my porch underneath the bedroom window. Like I've had enough of these raccoons.
Yeah.
That was enough.
And it's not like we didn't give them like, like I left a little bit of a gut pile basically. Like they could have easily went out into the field and ate the little bit of scraps that were left.
Yeah.
For them because I know that they're coming anyways. At this point, I might as well just give them a little bit so that they aren't underneath our window.
yeah.
I guess that would lead us into the next topic, which is pests. Raccoons are a pest. They rip things apart. For us is the worst. They rip the feed bags open if you leave it in the barn. They're in and out of the stuff. They chew on things. He knocked our wood pile over because they're climbing on the wood pile and knocked it all over. Like they just cause me waste my time and grief. Right? Squirrels are brutal.
Or the chipmunks.
Chipmunks, red squirrels for us,
Oh.
anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they will suck a lot of your feed without you realizing
yeah.
it. They will
Yes.
steal it.
Like
you know?
why?
Yeah,
At
they
this point,
do.
I'm like,
A lot of
it's-
feed.
It's there constantly. The feed is there 24/7. Just go and get it. But instead of going through the feeder and everything that's open
Yeah.
and available to them or on the ground, they go and make holes
Yeah.
in our big totes. Why?
Yeah, they chew right through the plastic.
Why do you need to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest
Pest.
biggest pest we have is the squirrels. They're the worst.
And the chipmunks.
Yeah, and the chipmunks.
Yeah.
See, I don't think the mice are kind of annoying in the house.
Well,
like,
we do get mice. They've actually, I don't know how they get in, but we've got like garbage pails, like where we put some of our feed and
Yeah.
stuff in.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And the mice like are like in there having babies and all kinds of stuff
Oh,
with the
geez.
feed.
Yeah.
We had to throw so much out. I'm like, I don't know how they got in it. There was no hole, but yeah. So the mice are a bit of a problem at our place. Like we still have problems with the red squirrels. They'll come and
Yeah.
they'll eat right out of the chicken feeder
Yeah.
and they
It's not,
take
it's
it.
not even that. They go into the house and everything too, right? Like the attic and.
I think there's.
So
yeah.
for mice, I have like I build my own traps, right? Anyone can do it. I did a video I think on YouTube, but I take a 5-gallon pail and you put a wire across with your pop can with a hole in the middle, put some peanut butter on it, it spins and drops in. I mean, that's the best mice control you can get.
Yeah.
However, it doesn't work for chipmunks. I
No,
mean,
you tried.
I could not.
Because I think they don't.
They end up just jumping
Yeah.
back out. Eh?
Yeah.
I don't think
So
yeah.
so those I think you need to live trap, but I mean
Now-
the dogs are really good when they're outside to run them off
Oh,
and be
yeah.
enough of a nuisance to keep them away, and that's probably going to be a theme of this is having a dog is really
Oh
the
yeah,
best
like
you
our
could go
dog will
with.
chase any of those
Yeah.
chipmunks, squirrels, mice.
Yeah.
The only thing that has accidentally killed the chipmunks and squirrels is actually the water troughs.
Yes.
So I don't know if they're going in to go get a drink and then
Mm.
slip in, or if they're climbing and jumping down and then end up in
It's
the
true.
water. I don't
Yeah.
know what happens, but there has been plenty of times this summer that we found them
Yeah,
in
that's
the water trough.
that's fun when you got to pump all that out and
Yeah.
start cleaning.
We do collect a lot of rainwater and we find that as well. There's a lot
Okay,
of mice and chipmunks in
See, we don't
them.
have any mice for some reason. It's literally just the squirrels and chipmunks.
We get voles sometimes.
Voles.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's the pests that like getting into gardening. Oh my god,
Yeah.
they can make a mess of a garden,
Make a
eh?
mess of your lawn. It's terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, all you see is like these little
Yeah.
grooves in the grass
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
dirt.
And rabbits are hard on gardens too. We don't have a big rabbit population the
We
last
had,
year,
like, I
Well,
want
they
to
are
say
uphill.
3 years ago.
Last year we had
No, I don't remember them last
a
year.
rabbit once in the garden.
We've had little brown rabbits once in a while, but I haven't been seeing them much.
but yeah,
See, and like the gardening side of things, I didn't really have to fence my garden. Now, I don't know if it's because of where it is, and again, because of how much activity we have on our property.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I didn't have any deer, I didn't have any rabbits. I think the only thing I had was, like you were talking about earlier, the wasps.
and the raccoons come for the corn.
Mm-hmm.
We had raccoons at the corn.
No,
That was
wasn't us. That was your brother.
oh yeah, that was him.
They
That was
got
him
them
this
right
year.
before.
But they did show up the same time the corn was ready on our
Well,
farm.
they do.
Yeah.
See, and that's why we always plant like squash and stuff, or
Okay,
really things that's got a lot of
The
like
thorns or
thorns
the-
or
yeah.
spikes on there.
Prickly thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find that so I always plant my corn
That's
and
why
I
it
put all
said
the
Three
squash
Sisters.
under, like, so it grows on the ground and then the corn grows up.
Yeah.
I always do that. But I'm like I said, I've never seen a raccoon
Oh,
at our place.
That's probably why I didn't
Hmm.
lose any, because I had that in the winter pen.
Well, I don't know. I had, that all it took was one meeting with Mr. Winchester, and that was the end of them. So they didn't come back the rest of the year. But that was, they were a nuisance. But my brother lost his whole corn crop pretty well to
Wow.
chickens. To the
raccoons.
raccoons.
Yeah.
And he was planning on, he feeds birds and whatever, so we wanted to do that. But yeah, I mean, he had most of his garden was corn, and it was just, he said it was just gone.
Yeah. He's like, you wait a couple days, and all of a sudden,
I have
you gotta
another.
go do it, and it's gone.
So Caitlin was just Caitlin's family farmstead mentioned about keeping raccoons off your hay is a must too. Their poop can
Yeah.
be very bad for your animals.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
And then T Handle 141 Homestead has had different experiences with coyotes, minks, weasels, fishers, hawks, deer flies, mosquitoes.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are something we're gonna get into.
We'll get into the
eventually.
insects at the end because
Yeah.
they're the worst.
They're terrible.
I think it's
But-
just because they affect
They're
us more. But
underestimated.
They are
I think
so
that's what it is,
underestimated.
that you underestimate.
Do we got new people on? Should we recap the beginning? They were good. We're good for their.
I think we're okay. At the
Yeah.
moment, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we find the biggest pest for us is a bit squirrels. We use the dogs like her. She
Yeah.
is you can
You say the
every
word
time you say the
and
word,
she's
you've
like-
probably heard her whining here. But So that's her thing, and
Our dog's really good with
yeah,
and stuff like that.
it keeps them away, and then to have them, the raccoons is a terrible pest for us. And the next big pest that I want to talk about is the bears and deer. They are a pest for us. We use electric fencing, and even some of our regular fencing. When the deer gets pushed, especially hunting season, when people out here they hunt with dogs in our area. You're like, I know in the States you guys have a lot of guys that hunt with dogs too, so you probably relate.
Mostly for bear,
But
like for them, they don't do.
They push the deer and the bear, and the deer aren't thinking about the fence anymore. Where in the summertime when there's no pressure, hardly ever do we have the fence get torn down by them. But when a dog's pushing them, they rip our electric fencing out, and then the bear, of course, it's a bear because you can basically see the path
my
from them
goodness.
ripping the fencing down from apple tree to apple tree. But it's a
Really?
nightmare when you've got, you wake up in the morning and your cattle are all over the place, the horses are all over the place. And we had this
No
happen
more.
twice this year.
more.
And I did a video on it. And that bear, I really don't like, I don't ever want to dispatch an animal. I don't think there's ever really a need for that. But at that point in time, if the second time it was done, 5 or 6 fencing posts were destroyed from him, and they're like $6 a piece or whatever, which doesn't seem like much, but then your cattle are all over the place, and the last thing you want is the cattle to end up on the road and get hit by a car or something. So, then you're out that kind of money. So I said to Jenny, and they had torn the pig fence out, the cattle fence, and the horse fence out one morning.
All in one shot.
I said that's enough. So we talked to a neighbor who was a bear hunter, and I said, hey, can I give you chicken scraps, like our leftovers from the chickens? And he fed and baited the bears, and he ended up getting the bear that was our problem, which I knew it because he had a notch out of his ear, and he ended up shooting that bear. And that's unfortunate, but I mean,
You can only do so
you can only do so much. But that was that was a nuisance.
That was
I
a
mean,
nuisance.
it's not so much a predator problem; it's a nuisance problem.
And
yeah.
they can be a huge nuisance. Yeah.
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 They'll
Yeah.
get down.
And the deer are bad because usually it's not one that goes through a fence. It's a whole bunch of them together, especially at the hunting season. So we plan this year now knowing that at hunting season to have our cattle home by then instead of being out grazing pasture to pasture, because I just know that it's going to be a problem again. Like we
Which
found.
is funny because I even fenced. I could see, because the grass had grown up so long, I could see their path. So I had fenced with a wide enough space so they could have their path and go up and down their path without hitting that fence. And they still somehow managed to take it out.
Well,
and we know
you
it's not the cattle.
found the dog coat, the
Yes, I found the
orange
in a
dog
different
coat.
field,
So.
but at the same time, I know it wasn't the cattle because of the way the fence was dragged
Into the field.
Oh.
Yeah.
into the
Okay.
field, right? And then we found the dog coat when I was undoing some other fence, and it was farther down into that field. So
And that's a problem too, because you don't want dogs chasing your livestock too.
Yes.
So for us, it's just
Stress.
bring them home
Yeah.
and
that's
avoid
its
the
own
deer.
nuisance
Yeah.
on its own too, is because there is a lot
Yeah.
of hounds here, and it's a
Yeah.
sad reality. But we've had to basically say to people unfortunately, your dog, if it comes on our property, it's fair game, because if it goes near a cattle,
Yeah.
there's not much you can do. That animal's worth a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But that's also another nuisance that isn't necessarily a wild animal, but it's literally.
Yeah.
And we've had experiences with other farms where they've taken out entire flocks.
Oh my.
One dog's come up and just
Took the whole chicken
took
flock
the
out.
whole chicken flock out.
And
I've
then,
heard that. Yeah.
And then you've got to
and then they
not
said to
dead
the
dead.
owner, well, all my chickens are laying here half dead. You owe me for these. And the owner goes, oh, no, I don't owe you nothing.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh,
People don't want to pay.
terrible.
People either don't have the money to pay for it, or they don't really know what it's worth, or you know what I mean.
Well, I don't think people sometimes realize the amount of effort and work and money you're putting into your livestock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even causing the stress, the fact that the dog could come in and literally run your cow to the you've got a pretty good highway there. It
Yeah.
could get hit and
Well-
have a
Well,
lawsuit on your hand.
we had an issue the first year with a neighboring dog, and they're friends of ours now. Like they're good people, but we had, I had to sit them down and say, listen, like each one of these calves to me is critical that it makes it, and your dogs are making a habit of chasing my animals.
Yeah.
I said, so it's the first time as a warning. The second time I went up was, I will not come here again and I said, the next time I come, the dog will be in the bucket of the tractor, unfortunately. And I said, I love dogs.
Yeah.
I can't lose my livestock
Yeah.
because your dog has taken a habit of chasing my cattle. And he said, you know what? I totally understand that. He said, I will do absolutely everything I can to keep them on my property.
Yeah.
And he solved the problem.
Yeah.
And, we offered him fencing options to teach him whatever. And, we've moved past it and we haven't had the problem again. But that was just a simple talking with your neighbors.
That's right.
But,
yeah, it's important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's...
So that's a non-wildlife nuisance that a lot
It's
of
a
people
nuisance,
don't
yeah.
factor in.
There's 3 posts this week in our area of people's dogs coming, getting loose.
Really?
Like, and
there's
it's a
been plenty
weekly...
of times where I pick them up or whatever
Yeah.
else. So
I know
would
we
rather-
try really hard not to let our dog wander, and there's the
Yeah.
odd time he's
He-
like a
he-
Houdini. He'll chew his way through wood and get out, but we've tried really hard to
Yeah.
keep him, and I walk him on a leash to do his
Yeah.
business, but you don't want to. You want to be in good rapport with your neighbors for sure.
That's
you don't
right,
want to
yeah.
cause problems. So.
And
And
that's,
if you can make a little bit of a change and an effort, like we've always free ranged our chickens, and our neighbor had mentioned that they were getting into their garden across the road. So
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? I'd rather be friends with my neighbor than have my chickens free ranging. So we
Right, yeah.
started. We fenced in a good area
Yeah.
of our chickens. They have lots of room to eat and forage
Yeah.
where they are. But I'm like, there's nothing like having a good neighbor, eating
No,
our
exactly,
chickens.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
it is what it is, right? But
And we understand that people hunt too, and that's
Yeah.
why, when you find a dog leash or collar, whatever, you're not going to go get upset. You know that they're putting food on their table for hunting.
Yeah.
So I am not going to ever get upset about somebody doing that, and we do our best to prevent it.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
obviously,
now they come in.
now the cattle come home.
There's preventative measures,
Yeah.
basically, in this case, like certain seasons,
Yeah.
for certain things. And
That's our pest control number 1. Also, it's not so much of an animal pest, but that in the spring we get bad lightning storms and bad wind storms. It happens every year, and it's something it can be a pest because it's going to happen in May, early June. That happens in this area. So we're very leery and very cautious of that, knowing that our fencer, we've blown up 2 fencers in 2 years due to lightning. That time of year, we've had the major storm last year, it's
ruined other fencing.
so certain times of the year, those pests are a larger problem.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think if we've covered all the pests I can think of, do you guys have anything?
No, we have deer once in a while in the garden, but it's usually in the fall.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, hey, have at her at the kale. You can eat as much kale as you want. But
Yeah.
so it doesn't really bother me. They don't come around that much. But
Come-
the other
Go ahead. I'll let you.
The other thing is chipmunks and red squirrels have been really big with us. So we've got a really older home with, a few crooks and crannies and holes there, here and there. And we've actually had, we can hear the red squirrels and chipmunks
Getting
running
in the rafters.
in our ceilings. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so one year, I don't know, within the first 2 years, I don't know what it was, our roof was leaking. We need to get a new roof on. And so it was dripping in our kitchen, and we put a bucket in the kitchen and just let the rain drip with some of those terrible storms. But until we anyways, we ended up affording to put a steel roof on, and all is good.
Yeah.
But Jay cut a hole.
Oh,
I cut a hole because I
He
got
cut a
tired of
hole
it.
that would
there.
have been terrifying.
And
Oh, no.
It was where the
Did you
leak
stick your hand up
was.
first, or did you stick your head up?
So, no. So what is because there was a huge leak. It basically was starting to have a sag.
A sag.
Yeah.
So to
Oh,
relieve
okay.
that, I
They
kind
just
of
cut it, yeah.
around that. Well, we also had a red squirrel
Living
up in that area
Yeah.
too. So what I ended up doing is putting one of those large
rat trap
things up there, and it took care of.
I'm telling you, I
I
would
would
be like
terrified to be like,
I would have been like,
do you stick your hand up in there, or do you try to stick your head and
get one of those grabbers to put it up and be like,
I kind of did a little bit of that when, so the first time I used it, it kind of was out of reach.
Yeah.
So I ended up we had one of those grabbers and being able to grab it, and I disposed of it. So my next thing I did is I ended up tying the string to it and screwing it down to a piece of wood so that it couldn't just take off.
Yeah, because it would.
I know some of the mice have done that too, where you can...
They're just like going all around, in the next room. But I'm not kidding. I was like, I don't know if I was making dinner or bread or I was doing something, because our dining table is like here and the hole is like right behind me. And I'm not kidding. There were times where I'd look up the hole and the squirrel's looking down.
Oh, no.
I'm not even kidding.
Yep.
oh my god.
So they could be like, those were definitely nuisance times, like, when we had those issues. And the fact that they, like, the squirrels and chipmunks can be a real nuisance to any, like, septics and stuff
big
too.
time, yeah.
So those, I think, are our biggest things. Thank goodness we haven't had, like, large issues other than having the squirrel in our ceiling. But I'll never forget. I think we got pictures. If we can find them, I'd love to post them.
I want to see that. That's funny.
I'm not kidding. I'm like, man.
That's
but
as bad as
I
me.
think our biggest pest for us is the mice. Like,
Same
there are
here.
certain years that the mice
This
are
year's bad.
terrible.
This year's bad.
So Jay and I would be sitting on the couch, like watching, something on the TV or something, and we're sitting there in the evening, and two mice come and run out in our living room. Right, we're sitting there, and they're chasing each other and playing, and I'm like, I'm right here. Like, what are you doing? So, anyways, and then we still have mice. Like, we have certain cupboards that we don't use because the mice use them. And so we do have, we do need to renovate. So as we save money and are able to, we are renovating as we live there. But mice are probably the biggest one. And so when we moved from the city, we used to have 2 cats. I'm a cat lover. But I said, I'm not going to get a cat again. I don't want fur in the house and all this stuff, right?
There's a lot of fur that they lose, okay? Let me just
But let
you.
me tell you, when it gets to a point where you're making bread and you're setting bread out, and then the next morning you get up because, you're letting your bread, and you see mice droppings on the table and around your homemade bread, and you're like, nuh-uh, I'm not doing that. So we ended up breaking down and we got a cat. We got a kitten, actually, but he's a cat now. He's a big boy.
Yeah, he's awesome. He's
But
huge.
I'm telling you, I have not seen a dropping anywhere other than the cupboard. There's no dropping on the floor. There's no drop. You don't even see a mouse. You don't see nothing. And if you do, it's usually dead and he's got it. I'm like, I'll never again.
Our
In the
cats weren't
country,
great.
I recommend if you can get a dog and if you have an old home, get a cat.
Yeah.
Those are my 2 things, because it was at a point I'm like, cats got dander and you hear about this stuff and they are terrible. They like to get on the table and the counters. Thankfully ours doesn't do that very much because there's not a lot of room for them to get up. But the major thing is I'm like, would I rather have a mouse on my table or a cat?
Yeah.
I chose the cat. Don't worry, my house is like, we clean and everything and clean the table. But it came to that point. I was tired of having mouse droppings. So it was like, well, I'm getting a cat.
They go in spurts. Like, we'll go a month with not a single mouse, and then it'll be like they've decided
To have a family
and come in, and then I'll catch a bunch of them for a week, and then we'll go nothing for a month, and then we'll get a bunch again. And this year has been exceptionally terrible. And I think they're like rabbits. Every couple of years, there's a lot more of them for some reason. So
that's what I find too. Like, we'll go a year, maybe 2 years, and we're like, that's not so bad. And then for some reason, like this past, I don't know, fall or spring, it's been so bad. Yeah. But then I know, what, next year will probably be a lot better.
See, and I feel like now we've kind of caught them all. And I think because there's more snow, there's obviously some spot where they're not getting in anymore because there's more snow.
That's right.
Because all of a sudden they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
They get in through we have a walkout basement, and the door there is like an odd size, and I know that it doesn't fit great, and I know that's how they get in. But
everywhere else house. We have spray foamed
Yeah.
up top, the attic, so that should be,
Yeah.
they shouldn't be able to get in there. We spray foam the basement.
Yeah.
So, like, other than that door, that's the only spot I can
Yeah.
think of.
Yeah. Yeah,
What's
it's
the-
fixing those holes and stuff and knowing where they are. So as we kind of move things around and renovate, we're finding
Find.
those
Yeah.
spots, but it takes time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's comments like,
Yeah.
Jay?
So Dave Knight was mentioning about their biggest pest was their neighbors' free-range chickens.
Yeah.
It started a range war like the Old West.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Okay, chicken people are crazy. Love you. But I'll admit it.
Just tell him.
But, like,
Dave just
I'm
get.
not denying crazy, okay?
no,
I'm not.
so I mean,
Oh, I'm on Team Dave. I'd be out there with the soup pot would be set up, looking at the neighbors like, yeah, send them over. I'm hungry. Yeah.
so, yeah, I could understand where that would become a war
Yeah.
in some ways,
Wow.
depending on the person.
Yeah. But I think also for our second biggest pest for the last couple of years was our own chickens, though. Getting into our
That's
gardens.
true.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's not just...
That is
Created
true.
your own pest.
We created our own
Amazing.
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, with our chickens, so we've been learning. So they would always go for like the leafy greens, your turnip tops, your lettuces, your chard. Okay. So I'm like, okay, they eat that. It wasn't so bad. But when you went from like 5 chickens to 15 to 30, you're like, that's too much.
Yeah.
That's too much they're eating.
30 chickens.
So
wow.
then we're down. We don't have that much now, but we used to. But we then decided, okay, we're gonna fence off a part of our garden where we can grow our chard, our lettuces, and the things that the chickens really like to eat. And then we're gonna grow all the stuff they don't like on the outside of
Yeah.
the fence. Well, I could tell you. They love the stuff on the inside just as much. Like they would eat the bean plants and the squash leaves, and I'm thinking, really? But they'll just eat whatever's there they can. So, anyways, it's a blessing that we fence them in because we didn't want them ruining our neighbor's garden, and it was a blessing to us because they're not in our garden now either. But.
So with that fencing, though, it was the old ones that were fine, but it was the newer chickens that taught the old chickens.
Oh, okay.
This
Yeah.
is the good
It's
stuff
true.
still on the
Yeah.
outside.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it was one of those
Okay,
things.
talking about gardens.
Oh, this is funny. I know what she's gonna say already.
No, but I will also rephrase that. No, I know. I was gonna say the cat and the garden don't mix well.
No.
Okay, because
No.
That's not what I'm
that's
talking
like. So we had a barn cat. Obviously, again, predator problem. Got the barn cat.
Coyotes, hard on cats.
Are hard on the cats, despite there being a cat house down the road.
Yeah.
You would think they would have plenty to eat over there, but they come for our one. But anyways, when it comes to gardening, like I had to fence not for the deer, not for the rabbits,
Just keep the cat out.
for the freaking cat. Like
Now get.
True.
and then so at this point I had to take down my fence because we have poultry out in the field. And Rob has his lovely pigs who have little piglets who are super cute and super fast. But at this point, they've gotten more brazen because they've realized that they can just, it doesn't matter, they can just go through that electric fence.
Well, they were small enough to go under it, eh?
Right?
Yeah.
And you can only fence so low because the moms push up the dirt or like the grass at that point. Like we were only fencing, like what's that? Like
4 inches.
Yeah, like 4 to 5 inches above. So
There's a period where piglets are just small enough to make it and not big enough to get over it. And that happened to be at Jenny's gardening time.
When we had the garden, and they were getting closer and closer and closer, and finally by that point, I think they were into...
They got your kale.
Yeah, they were into my kale, which wasn't a problem because it was kind of like my outskirts of my... It was just whatever was left over that I kind of planted quickly.
God, it was funny.
So at that point, I'm like, okay, they're getting real close. So then I had to start catching piglets. Oh my goodness, you want to laugh at that?
Gracie and me were on top of the hill, like our overlooking this show, because that's what it was.
Well, I was yelling.
Like,
losing
you know,
it.
chickens are fast, okay? But piglets, oh my God, they're
Yeah,
quick.
they're like, yeah.
So hearing a piglet squealing at the top of his lungs and watching Jenny getting wriggled around by this little piglet, walking it into the barn pen because she's decided that they're not going in the garden. And Gracie and me are rolling around crying on top of the hill laughing at her.
At that
Because
point, I
she'd get it and then it would just jump out of the pen in the barn and come right back around. So she's
No,
like,
I didn't realize
no,
for a little bit.
but we seen it. So she's like, I got 5, and I'm like, oh yeah. It was like, and she's like, you see the look on her face, like, wait a minute.
And
Now,
then
was
at
this
one point-
recorded at all, or no?
No, I couldn't. I was incapacitated. I was dying laughing. Yeah.
It's not like they're light. Like, yeah, they're small and everything, but like
They weighed
they're
about
long,
25 pounds at
and
that
they're,
point.
Like, you're wiggling and you gotta hold them awkwardly, so like they're screaming and
Oh
like
my.
it's like it's a bloody show is what it is.
It was
It's just
hilarious.
real.
It was hilarious.
Yeah, so I had to solve how many holes did I have to fix?
She caught about 16 piglets, but we only had 5 left.
5 in total. Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of rounds. And I had to go, at one point, I had to block in the moms. So then what would happen is I'd have to scare them on the front of the barn. They'd go all the way around, and I'd have to go around the other way, get in quick before they could, make it to their moms. And so I'm running around over here.
Oh my.
Finally, they're going in. And they're trying to get underneath, so they kind of have to go under a gate and then over a piece of wood. So at that point, I can grab them, and it's easy enough to grab them. Moms aren't
Wow.
bugging me, right? So I've got to run all the way across, catch them, and then I've got to drag them all the way across again into the pen, and try and figure out how to open the pen door while you're wrangling things because we have a barn that doesn't actually have true doors. These things all drag on the ground for some reason. I don't know why.
Because it's 200 years old and I'm not a carpenter. But, but
So,
I couldn't help you, Jenny. I was dying. I couldn't. There wasn't much I could do. Just laugh.
needless to say, I weaned the pigs because they were going into my garden.
Yeah. The mums are pretty well done at that point too, which they were like enough's enough to close for business.
Oh,
But that was funny.
So sometimes your own livestock become
it's
their
true.
own pests in some ways.
Yeah, it's true.
So
But cats are bad though.
Oh,
They're actually
yeah.
toxic to your garden.
yeah.
Urine is
Yeah.
very that's one thing I don't like is cats in my garden, and I do have a few that get in there sometimes.
Not a cat person at all. That's why we don't have another one. The neighbors' cats, I try and convince them to come around, and then because I don't want to own
Yeah,
another
you know
one.
what they do.
Yeah.
But we've out of everything we've covered, I think the number one thing I've been waiting to talk about is insects.
Insects,
Oh,
yes. Does anybody have
my.
anything they want to talk about with pests or nuisance, or we can move on to
I think we
insects?
can just move on. Dana was just mentioning about that they didn't think that they had many predators until they put up a camera,
Yeah,
like the trail cams.
yeah.
So they're getting foxes, bears, raccoons, fishers, minks,
Wow.
and all throughout the night and stuff like that.
I sat on Rusty. I just sat on him. That's terrible.
Dana also mentions my roosters keep squirrels and chipmunks away.
Oh, really?
That must be a good thing because our roosters they're too docile or calm.
Yeah,
or
I always
something,
thought
'cause
that
I didn't never seen
chickens
one.
our roosters don't do much.
would eat mice, or mice, yeah.
Really? Yeah.
Mine will not touch them. Not that I'm saying that's a bad thing, because that's kind of disgusting. But I've
They
heard
eat
that.
frogs.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
they love frogs.
We got a
They're
video of
the
them. The
most
frog.
hilarious
Whoa.
things when it comes to frogs. They all chase each other.
So
and-
then-
Frog legs are just kind of dangling while they're running around.
Your
with them.
chickens are not hungry enough. If
Huh?
they're not eating those mice,
That's true.
and
I
you're
need to
literally
starve
watching
mine.
them watch them. If they're watching the mice and not eating them, but they'll go after a
frog.
a frog or whatever. It's mean they're not hungry enough.
Yeah.
You're overfeeding.
Then
them.
I gotta underfeed my chickens, I guess.
We've had quite the experience with the chicken and whatever is in that pen. They are like pterodactyls. They just eat everything.
Yeah,
Like
I'm
they're
gonna have to start starving mine, maybe.
maybe it's because we have meat birds and they'll eat until they can't
yeah.
move. I don't know. Maybe
I
that's
don't know.
different.
People always told me that they would eat the mice. I'm not
I've seen them
crazy
videos of
fond of my birds eating mice, but
Yeah.
at the same time, I don't want the mice eating up all the feed and
Right.
stuff either.
Mm-hmm.
That's
But
yeah.
not that we get like a lot out there in the barn. We get it comes and goes.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry.
Let's go on the insects.
Yes,
Yeah.
insects. I know Rob's waiting for this.
Yeah,
one,
big
so.
time. Because it's related to the whole thing about going rural. If you're not ready for that,
Whoa.
look out.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to talk about it, and that was the number one thing on my book was like, if you're thinking about going rural, before you even look at any of the other topics, you need to book yourself a weekend in Algonquin Park
And go
sometime
camping. Yeah.
like mid to late May, early June, and plan to live like out of a tent and you know, I don't know, make a project to work or something in the bush because it's
awful.
It's awful.
Yeah.
It is awful.
We have like we're not bad because we have a breeze and you know we learned that cedar oil is excellent for keeping the bugs off.
Certain things. Yeah.
But you know, we've got some friends here that moved out, and you know they came from the city or whatever, and they come out and May, June into like July when the deer flies are almost there, like still around. They haven't done anything yet. They're like, well, the bugs are too bad. I don't want to go out. Well, that's your prime time. You need to be out. You need to learn how to work with the insects.
That was a huge thing for us because when you're gardening, like that is like the time to be out when the black flies are terrible.
So between Kendra's first time being out in the country with tons of snow, throwing the shovel up against trees, to being carried away from the little black flies.
There were so many times.
Black flies?
The little ones.
Oh, they're awful.
You weren't home, but we did something. We went there.
We
for
had
something.
to cut a tree up when Jay was
Yes.
gone or whatever.
So
Yeah.
we came and helped
Okay.
put up a tree after that storm.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness, I underestimated just how bad the black flies
But
were.
that wasn't really the.
That wasn't a
No,
lot.
No.
that was like
That
the
was
summer or
bad.
something.
Jenny's like, I'm like, yeah,
I'm
Jenny,
like,
we're gonna
I'm
throw the
dying.
bug nets in. She's like, no, we don't need them. They're not bad. And I'm like, yeah, I guess they're not bad at our farm, but we got a breeze and they're more open.
We
And
underestimated that. We forgot that, like, we have obviously a breeze makes that much of a difference because we don't suffer until we go up to the woods. Like if we go up to the top of that hill and I try to fence there. Oh.
So for our area, for the people watching, is like you're gonna get like 2 to 3 weeks in May, roughly, if you're lucky, where before the bugs come, and then it's like overnight. It's just like a light switch, and all of a sudden they go from just flying around annoying you to biting in your hair, and it's black flies first for us.
No,
and
it was mosquitoes, I think, first.
No, the mosquitoes are
Black
always
flies
present, but the
black
black
flies
flies
are
are the
first.
nuisance.
First?
And the black flies, they come out and they're out usually throughout the day, and they don't go away really until into June when it heats up and gets hot, and then the deer flies come, and then the horse flies.
The deer flies, you're like, they're the angels. Like, you're waiting for them. Like, I'm like, Jay, I seen a deer fly. And you're like, that was it. Like, you know.
A deer fly? Do you mean dragonfly?
A dragonfly.
I mean,
I tell you.
for me, when I see the deer flies, I know that we're almost through bug season.
Yeah.
And then mosquitoes.
No, it's the dragonflies. My apologies.
Yes.
I'm
dragonflies are my favorite.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
So
sorry, yes.
Yeah, so that we get the dragonflies a lot at the other house, which is like 15 minutes down the road.
Yeah.
Which is funny, we don't really get them here, and I don't know if it's because of the amount of wind.
Maybe.
However, we now have
Sparrows.
And so they didn't exist on the farm when we first bought it, but bringing livestock back, we now have sparrows. So like
You got a duck.
Yeah, you got a duck for them because if you're on the hilltop working with your cattle or whatever, those guys are just flying in. But they're doing the same thing. They're eating the mosquitoes and the bugs and everything else.
Yeah.
Just like The
dragonflies.
dragon.
I will mention another
I was about to say
huge
pests.
pest for
Yeah.
us is the starlings.
Starlings, yeah.
Are
Oh,
awful.
okay.
They get into everything. They find a way to get into.
Nest.
Yeah, they nest in our.
Kind of like the east
Who's
rock.
it?
Not
No,
the east
what
rock,
is
the,
it?
They're the ones that make
The
mud.
soffit.
Yeah.
The
They'll
mud
make the mud nests. I
No,
believe.
no.
No?
I think
Well,
the
they're
mud
pretty
nest
muddy,
is
but
the
they're
barn
more-
swallow.
Maybe
They're
there's a
they're
swallow.
what
Ours
built
is
in the
swallows.
water that you left the water, or they built a
Oh
nest.
yes,
in.
that
Yeah.
guy. Yeah.
But they're so
Right in the hose.
I was aircraft mechanic before, and there's certain times a year where you have to do special checks because birds will build a nest almost overnight
Yes.
and any
Oh,
crevice they
yes.
can, and it's that springtime of year, which same time as bug season. So, I mean, yeah, I agree. There definitely can be a pest.
They are a huge
But,
pain in my tushy.
For us, they're so vital to keep the fly population down. We encourage as
sure.
much of them as we can, especially around the cattle. Like the horn flies are what bug our cattle, and they carry like pink eye and whatever else. And we don't spray our cattle with pesticide or anything like that, or fly repellent. What we do use sometimes is we
Well,
use
I make a natural one.
which is cedar oil and
The
whatever.
odd time where I'm feeling
Yeah.
real generous to them.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, the cattle are good to throw dirt on themselves or whatever else. They'll create an area where they can do that, and then we use garlic infused into their mineral,
Yeah.
and that seems to help.
Okay.
Yeah, but garlic for us, cedar oil, and that kind of stuff is really important. And the other thing we do is we buy some good bug nets. You can get them from Mountain Equipment Co-op, and
Me and
those
Tara
are like
actually this year had them.
the same kind.
Similar. I
Yeah.
did buy them. They were somewhat similar.
I use the Bens. Bens is a company like BENS, and you can buy them pretty well anywhere for like camping supply stores. They're a little lighter mesh, but I find that them little black fly
Gnats
buggers
and
can't
gnats,
get through
yeah.
them.
Yeah.
And the other ones we have from Mech are a little heavier duty, but they sometimes you can get bit through them a little bit more. But I mean, we each have 2 bug nets, and that's like our work dress, we'll call it.
Yeah.
If for
Yeah,
2
I
to
do
3 months a
use
year.
bug nets quite a
Excuse me.
bit, but I have an experience. When we first moved up, our neighbor, I'm sure he would laugh at us.
Oh, he definitely will.
I was out there doing my gardening and all that stuff, and I'm geared up, and he's out there in his t-shirt, and I'm like, I don't know how he does it, but he always says, well, it's in the blood, right? So I'm not kidding you. For I don't know, the first 2-3 years, I did wear a bug net though every time because they are so bad. Like they get in you're literally, I'd be bleeding down here. They're at
And
your ears,
even
and you're
with
just
those bug
bleeding.
nets, they wouldn't really be able to bite kind of through here.
Yeah.
They'd
Still
find their
get-
ways to get through
Yeah.
the areas.
But I like the last few years though, I don't use the bug net anymore. Like I'll go out there and I tough it out, but they don't bother me as much. There are still times. I think I have actually a video on our channel of my hands, and it's just all blood because
Yeah.
of how much. But
I think
you
I'm getting
do
like that.
kind of get accustomed to it, or
He
I
doesn't
don't know
get
what
them
it
as-
is.
He doesn't get them
They
as
don't-
bad as what I do.
No.
Yeah.
And I used to get them really bad. I think they've just had enough of my blood to
Certain
do
ones,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, they like new blood,
Yeah.
fresh blood.
But
But yeah,
it definitely, like, having polysporin on hand and having the, our daughter swells up pretty good to black fly bites. And I did too, really bad as a kid. After bite and that kind of stuff. 'Cause
Yeah, so
Yeah.
she doesn't have to suffer like we did as kids. You remember when we used to have calamine lotion? And it used to have the pink dots everywhere?
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Now they make it as like a clear version,
true,
right?
true.
So they'll never understand that part, but
The bug
I
nuts,
remember that
the
stuff.
bug nuts will get you through if you're moving rural. Like I think we use them.
Oh, yeah.
We use them a lot, but because we have cedars and whatever, and when I'm down in the bush, those times, those months of the year, is a lot for me. Is collecting firewood, and they're nasty
They are,
in the
yeah.
woods. So,
They are probably like the worst part of
Yeah.
moving to the country.
and I'm bad for it. Like I'll just put a little extra oil in my chainsaw just to kind of make it smoke a bit to keep them off me. Like
Yeah.
they're
Oh, yeah.
kind of nasty, but yeah, I mean. The bug nets will get you through, and I think it's a huge thing that you need to invest in.
Oh
is-
yeah, don't move to the country without
Really?
getting bug nets. That's for sure.
it was because of the
I know.
oil.
Yeah.
The other thing is, so like we know mosquitoes are terrible. No matter
Yeah.
where you are, they're bad. But flies, I'm sure that you. So
Houseflies.
we
Yeah,
have
houseflies, yeah.
houseflies. Yeah,
Oh my
all
gosh,
these
yeah.
flies and deer fly and mosquitoes.
horn
They
flies,
always
yeah.
find a way to get in the house. You can't get away from that. It's annoying, but they do. But I'm talking about just the regular. I don't know, just flies. So we had a situation with our chickens where we had like an overrun of flies, and I never really realized it before,
Lily.
but one of our hens, she was probably a couple years old, and I noticed that she was looking really like lethargic and weak, but the others of the flock didn't seem bad at all. And so when you do the usual, you check her out, you check her bum, you make sure everything is good, you check her legs. I actually found that there was like little maggots near her bum, like in her vent area. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So I did some research because I've never had this problem before.
Botfly?
They look like a house or a poop fly is what they look like.
Really?
So anyways, I started hanging up a bunch of those
Yeah.
strips
Yeah.
all over the barn, and we got a ton. I cleaned her up, put her on some like electrolyte water and things like that. Literally put her somewhere where there was like no flies. And she, within like days, she perked right back up. I rechecked her. There was not a thing wrong with her, but she was overtaken by the flies and because the maggots, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like that's a huge thing. If you do have livestock, flies are going to be there. It's part of having them, but they do need to be maintained.
Yeah.
Well, I think in sheep it's called fly strike.
I think
And
it could be called that too with chickens.
Yeah, and it's basically where they
Yeah.
kind of get in there somehow
I
and
don't know.
breed in their fur or their
Yeah.
feathers or whatever.
Yeah.
And it can happen to almost any livestock, really. So
Yeah.
you have to be aware. So there is
Bot flies.
there is times where if for some reason the cattle are in an area where they can't necessarily get away, or there's not enough breeze, or
Yes.
they can't create like a dust bath themselves, then I will come in with my homemade stuff that I use for my horses, and I will spray them down too.
So that's
It's also good training too, because like this might not like for us to pertain for us specifically, I guess, is like those working around those large animals and stuff, getting them used to spraying something on them is like you
not
don't
a
want them
bad
panicking.
scenario.
So
Yeah.
when there's two pastures that it's kind of bad for bugs. So those are the ones that we kind of know to put the spray on, but it's fine. It's an interaction with the cattle too, so they get
Oh,
used
yeah.
to it. But I mean, keeping them down. I mean, for us, we run risks of pink eye is the biggest, because the flies live in the shit, the poop will go, and then they go around their eyes, and then you get pink eye. So, and that's a huge risk to cattle. So we try and keep the fly population down. I mean, through different means. There's like commercial pesticides and stuff you can use, but I mean, it's bad stuff. Like it's not something
Yeah.
I'm putting on my beef. So
Yeah.
we try and stay away. And the pigs, they can take care of themselves. We have Berkshire pigs, so they're not like commercial hogs or landrays or whatever. They have a thick coat of hair. They're black in color, and they'll roll in the mud or whatever to keep the flies off them. They also don't get sunburns and
So
whatever.
yeah, then with the time that we found this with our one chicken, it was remember in the spring we got all that rain?
Yeah.
It was just like a sopping wet. So all
Yeah.
their dust baths were just puddles
Right.
at this point.
Yeah.
And it was just really hard to keep up with them. But
Yeah.
and
there's definitely certain times of the season.
Yeah.
it was.
And
it was
that's the
nice.
thing with bugs, like you said, it's the insects come out, and the key points of the season, that May, June, is when you really need to get your garden going. You really need to get your, for us, it's getting the livestock back on a pasture, and calves are coming in, and trying to teach a calf an electric fence is always fun. So there's a million things happening at once, and then the bugs show up,
Yeah.
and it's like the worst
It's like,
day ever, because you're like, oh no, they're here. I wish I could have got that done before they
Yeah.
came, and now you add that to the list of things you have to deal with. But we have seen people that are like, I can't handle this anymore. And
Oh yeah, I'm
Okay,
sure we're all guilty
I am
of
that
it.
person, 100%. So
Yeah, but
I'm now fencing in the wintertime.
yeah,
So I would much rather fence in the winter or do stuff in the late fall, spring.
Yeah.
Like, I'm fine for that. I don't like the heat and I don't like the bugs. So I'm pretty much out at that point. I'm like doing other stuff or doing indoor projects, whatever I have to. Or I'll do things in the evening when it's not so bad, it's cooler, or there's less bugs or if there's a windy day, like I'll be like, okay, perfect, there's a windy day. I'm going out to that top field where I know it's full of bugs.
Yeah.
And it's, so you pick and choose.
You guys get a lot more wind here than we do.
Yeah,
sure.
it makes a huge difference. So like that's something to factor into when you're buying a property is like it's kind of nice having that little bit of breeze because it definitely pays off.
It keeps them at bay a little bit,
Yeah.
a little easier.
Yeah.
Do we have anything coming in from our any questions or comments?
Dan was saying that because I asked the question, what are some of your favorite insects in your area? Dana mentioned bees and black fly, or not black flies. Deer flies are their favorite insects.
We didn't get much this year.
No.
It wasn't
normally,
bad.
Like normally they go after the horses, and we see them mostly on the horses. They weren't strong this year.
No.
Not at all.
What-
For some reason.
Well, what we haven't talked about is the not the ladybugs, the Asian ladybugs.
yeah.
Oh, those.
They're bad here.
They are bad.
Yeah.
We have 2 in our house right now.
Yeah.
Asian
I forget
beetles. What are they
Yeah,
called?
They're
They're
horrible
a mock.
here.
Basically, they're a mock version of a ladybug, but they're like more of like an orangey than they
They
are
are.
red.
Mhm.
And
They-
they're
they-
really bad.
They plague all the houses in this area, I think.
Yeah.
And some years they're worse than others, but they are an absolute nuisance. They're in the barns, they're in the sheds,
Yeah.
they're all over
They're
the
mostly
place.
in our cottage actually, which is really funny.
Yeah.
But I guess they're actually attracted to the lighter colors. So for some reason they
The
really
pine trim.
Yeah, and they really like
Interesting.
our other house because it's beige.
Yeah.
They don't like citrus, so I've learned that. I did a lot of research
Yeah.
because they drove me crazy at the other house.
Wow.
We didn't have very much here. Did they have the odd
No,
one
but
here?
I know there's
They're
a lot
coming
of
out more now for some reason.
there's a lot of people that ask that question that when they stop here at the farm and talk about things, they were talking about how much of a nuisance they were for them.
Yeah,
But-
citrus.
We've had them at certain points in the summer. They like literally fill up like all of
corner.
our on
Or
a
something.
tree. They'll like fill up a whole tree trunk.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
I've
I
never
don't
seen
know.
them on a tree trunk.
They're
Interesting.
like
Yeah,
there's thousands of them.
They're horrible. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit of citrus, like a orange cleaner, that kind of thing. I think I did a little.
Do they
bit
do? Do they have a purpose? Like what do they
I
do?
don't know. They
No.
bite though. I know that.
They have
Yeah.
no purpose. They probably feed something else.
I'm sure.
But I don't think
Well, it's the same with mosquitoes and black flies and stuff like that. Even though they're a pest, there are benefits. to
they're
the
they're a prey to something else.
But they also they can
They pollinate your
pollinate too,
your,
Yeah.
fruits and
which is kind of
vegetables.
why they come out in the spring.
Okay,
Yeah.
I have an odd pest for us. Weeds and weed seeds.
I
Yeah.
have weed seeds.
Right?
Yeah.
Just thinking about that, I'm like, oh,
That's a nuisance.
That is a
That's a
nuisance.
nuisance. Yeah.
100%. Like it's beautiful that we have this nice wind and everything, but that also creates its own issue.
Yeah.
We get
When it comes to
milkweed.
weeds.
Milkweed is a big one, and goldenrod is horrible for
Thistle
us.
right now, thistle is
Oh.
spreading on this farm, and the only way to get rid of it is to basically pull it.
Yeah.
But it's really funny because I was fencing the one day, and I watched. As I was fencing, I'm watching it all kind of fall out, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to get rid of those because they're going to spread on the field. I can see them going, and you can see the white little tuft going. And then I realized, well, that's coming out at pretty even increments. And I'm watching it. And then I realized there's this tiny, tiny little bird. And what it's doing is it's sitting there, and it's actually taking the seed head, taking the seed, and leaving the fluff. So it's eating the seed, and the fluff is going out in the air. Eating the seed,
What?
fluff going out in the air. It was so neat to watch.
That's cool.
And if you just take the time, it's amazing to
it's
see how
true.
Mother Nature cycles
It's true.
through things. So what is a pest for us is food for something else per se, right? And,
So
and
that-
any of those predator issue is always it's a full circle.
So that could be something that wasps is a pest to us, but it's actually a really good benefit if you're wanting to grow cabbages or anything in the Baracus family. I think that's how you say it. So we have a lot of cabbage moth problems, and they cover like literally like our turnip, the cabbages, the broccoli, cauliflower.
Are they the green ones?
They're
like
little
little
green.
green?
They're little green, and they're little
And they're
white
quite
moss.
vibrant, right?
Okay.
They're white moss, and you'll see
Yeah.
them fluttering around your cabbage and lay all their stupid eggs. But
See, I never see the wasp, but I see the little.
yeah, they're like really bright little caterpillars. So that's the thing with like I don't like wasps. They are a huge pest and nuisance. They're also an insect, but so they're very territorial too. So we like to go out and pick our grapes when the grapes are ready, and for some reason they love being around the grapes, and you'll be out there picking, and you'll be running to the porch, and they'll be coming right at you, and they ping their little heads off the porch door like they're wanting to get you. Like, and then I'm in the raspberry bushes, like I said, I think the last live that we did, I'm out there picking my red raspberries, and the wasps are devouring my yellow raspberries. They're eating them. Yeah. And so you're in there, and I've gotten stung a few times while picking. So they are a huge nuisance. But I've noticed, and I've done research on the wasps, they will actually eat the caterpillar, the cabbage moth caterpillar, as well as the parasitic wasp will inject their young into the cabbage moth caterpillar as well. So as much as I want to get rid of them, I really do need them to keep down the cabbage moth caterpillars, because they pretty much devoured my cabbages for 2 years in a row.
Wow.
So
I think it was a couple years ago you also had tomato hornworms.
we did have tomato hornworms. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Garden pests. There we go. Yeah, the tomato hornworm. My first experience ever having them was they're so ugly, and they're like big and like fat.
Lit.
The chickens liked it.
No,
Yeah.
don't even want to think about
They're
it.
big.
Crunch, crunch.
They're big.
When the
So-
chickens
I
find
gotta-
anything, they're hilarious to watch. I love watching chickens.
I love chickens too.
When they run.
Yeah.
They get a worm in their mouth and they just take off, and then
Like,
everyone
instead of
takes
just
off.
quietly eating it, it's like, oh my god, I got a worm!
Yeah.
And they like just panic, mass panic, and then everyone else is like, what do you got? And it's just, it's hilarious
It's
to
almost
watch
like the
that.
Finding Nemo seagulls.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
But this again brings you to the point where like rotate your crop. Like don't
Yes.
plant in the
Yes.
same spot, because some things like the tomato hornworms, like they'll put their young or whatever they do, I don't know. It's in the ground and it comes up the next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So moving your tomatoes, I mean, there's nothing there for them to eat, right?
Yeah.
So rotating your crop is a big thing and keeps those pests down too. so-
Livestock as well. So like,
Yep.
you were speaking earlier about, the flies go into the poop or the dung, and then they tend to go near the eyes because of soft tissue and whatever else, right? So for us, we don't have as much of an issue because we're rotating our livestock constantly. So they're leaving the fresh poop that all the insects want to be on.
And the turkeys.
And the
Yeah.
Well, the turkeys don't even really touch them because they know that there's nothing really on them yet.
Yeah.
So the turkeys will actually wait until the poop is completely dry, and then they'll flick it up and over because the new grass is starting to grow through, and they actually want the worms underneath.
Wow.
So it's not even the larvae.
These are wild turkeys. It's not.
Yeah.
Wild turkeys.
Wow.
But I mean, the chickens do the same thing. They'll kind of wait too. So, yeah, basically, by rotating, whether it be a garden or your livestock, it obviously makes a huge difference in your pest control, basically. More natural way of doing it.
Yes.
This year we're completely moving our, where we've been pasturing really heavy, like rotational grazing is what we do, and mop grazing. We've done it on our farm heavily, so this year we're moving it to the neighboring farm where we've only been cutting hay. So we'll put them on there, and then we'll rest our farm for organic material, and we'll cut hay off here this year. It'll just kind of break it up a bit, and we'll hopefully, like, instead of rotating your crops where one year you're going to plant squash, next year plant corn or whatever, right?
Yeah.
It's the same principle. We're just going to try it, see how it's going to work out.
That's good. I don't know how much longer we have, but I did want to touch on pantry moths.
Yeah,
'Cause
I don't know what they
I
are.
don't know what that
Yeah.
was.
So I
Yeah.
didn't really know what they were either. A friend of mine had pantry moss years ago, and she pretty much says if you get them, it's the worst experience ever. And I'm like, well, I'm never gonna get pantry moss, But I did. I got pantry moss 2 years ago. Anyways, you can't get rid
Yeah.
of them. We don't really have them right now, but then again, we do.
We
So
lowered the count.
oh yeah. So what a pantry moth is, basically it's like a brown little moth with a really light brown little mark in the wings. And they're about like this big. And they come in usually if you're buying grain shipped from somewhere. So like rice, whether you're doing like millet or different things like that might come from other countries and things. So what my advice is to freeze everything when you bring it home and then put it on your shelf, which I never really did. I've done that sometimes with like seeds and stuff like that, like nuts and seeds, But I didn't do that for my rice, and I do buy, different types of grains and stuff. Anyway, so there was a few times where I would go and I would get out, like whether it be grains, even spaghetti, or even like boxes of crackers or anything, and I'm like, you would see webbing. You'd see webbing, like little webbing, or like, it's hard to describe until you see it.
Already. I'm like, no.
So
Yeah, now I'm already
basically they come in, but the thing is, when you
That's what they look
yeah,
like.
that's what they look like.
Oh.
So
That's the little larvae.
the larvae are like
Yeah.
the
Looks
most
like maggots.
disgusting thing I've ever seen.
Yeah,
But
we don't have
so
them
basically they
yet.
come in, say, on your rice, and they don't come in as like a caterpillar or like a larvae or anything. They come as a little egg. And if you don't rinse them or if you don't freeze them to kill them, then they're there, and at the right temperature, they will develop into like a maggot. And then what they do is they eat the grain, and the webbing is where they lay their eggs, and it's just a vicious cycle. Then they come out to a moth, and they flutter all around. And so I found in one of my pantry doors there I could see webbing and stuff.
I am never eating rice again. Thank you
It's
very
not
much.
just rice. It's not just rice,
So if you
okay?
feel something crunchy
Yeah.
within your rice.
No. So it got to the point, I'm like, I don't know where these stupid moths are coming from. They're like flying around, and I'd be killing them with like our little zapper
Zappers.
wands, right?
That's another thing. Get zappers.
Get
Yes.
zapper
Zapper
wands,
wands,
yes.
Another benefit.
Yeah.
I'm not
But
responsible
I
enough.
literally, we threw out like hundreds of dollars worth of food.
Hey.
Like literally hundreds of dollars worth of food. It doesn't matter if it's in a glass container or a plastic tote or in a Ziploc bag or vacuum sealed. It doesn't matter. So what they do is they basically just keep reproducing in your grain or whatever else they can eat. And then they move on to somewhere else. They'll eat their way through a whole plastic. And then when you have like your glass, because I store a lot of stuff in glass. And what they'll do is they'll lay their eggs just around the sides. You can't see them. You open it up, you get a little bit of grain, close the lid, they're in there. I don't know how they do it, but they do it. I had a thing of sunflower seeds that I probably had 4 or 5 months, never opened, because I buy things usually in bulk. Like I go to buy big bulk bags and then I store it. And I hadn't opened that in months. And I'm like, how is there a moth in that thing? It was a glass lid, everything's sealed airtight. And it just, literally, we went through our whole kitchen. I got rid of the source where I found the main motherhood of them all. And it cut it back drastically. But we would find a moth here and there because the little maggots would crawl and they'd find a little spot and they would just hatch out or whatever. And then now, like we haven't seen them in months, and then just randomly we'll see one flying around the house. And then I went to do, I want to say December, I went to plant some lettuce seeds when the price of lettuce went like astronomical. I'm like, getting out the lettuce seeds, I'm going to grow lettuce. And then it was like 3-4 weeks and none of my seeds were sprouting up. I'm like, lettuce is the quickest thing to grow. I'm like, what's going on? So I go and investigate, and in my seeds I put all my seeds in a container. So any greens go in one container, tomatoes go in another container, and I do them. And they're all in plastic containers with lids that shut. And I put that inside a bigger container with a lid that shuts, plastic. So I went in and I investigated, and I had little maggots growing in my container within the container. I don't know how it did it. I haven't been in that since the spring.
Wow.
And I opened up some of the lettuce seeds and there was webbing. So I don't know but the thing is I didn't really notice, but I planted the seeds. So I don't know if they're eating the inner seed and leaving the shell.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you gotta be kidding. These things are like gonna be the death of me.
Lettuce
But I can't right now we haven't seen one in how long?
About a week.
No, that's not true. That's not true.
No, maybe a month.
Okay.
But it would be
But
like
I
the
guarantee when the temperature's just right, I guarantee they're gonna hatch again.
Huh.
Just whatever you do, like throw your grains even for a couple days in the freezer, and then store them if you have to.
Yeah,
It's
so I
not
think
worth the
for all
time.
of our grains
Well,
and
it's
stuff,
still
we
the
put them
thought
into
that
those
would be
50-gallon out in the
Yeah,
porch or
where it's cold and frozen.
where it's cold and frozen.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Anyways, I have to say that is probably like
Wow.
the worst
That's
pest
that's
insect.
the winner of pests.
That's it.
No thanks. Especially now throwing $100 worth of food out. Like
And then seeds
like food
and
is
like,
crazy right now, and seeds, the whole nine. Like that's a major setback. Yeah.
like yeah.
Dana was mentioning about building bat boxes or houses because they eat all pretty much any airborne bug.
Yeah.
Even although it's at nighttime, it
still helpful.
helps. So maybe that's another thing we can look.
We
into.
do have bats around.
Yeah, we get quite.
Yeah,
a
we
few.
had that one bad experience.
We had a bat and it was in Hannah's
in the
room.
squirrel hole.
No, no, it was
Maybe,
actually
I don't
in
know.
Hannah's room and she was sleeping.
And we actually, that was another thing we invest in because being new to the country, bugs and stuff being in the house even, and so we had one of those
The netting for the
nettings
bed.
anyways for beds or
Yeah.
outdoor things
Yeah.
or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, so we had that in there. Anyways, Hannah was terrified of a mosquito at that time.
Right,
She was
yeah.
very young. And anyways, yeah, she had this bat in her room. I don't know how we got it to the living room, but was she still
She
sleeping?
was still sleeping, yeah.
Anyways, he managed to get it into the living room and he captured it with this big old mitt and something.
It was a net.
A net?
Fish it was Kendra or Hannah's butterfly net, I believe.
Yeah?
Yeah.
But I'm like,
Kendra's in her room screaming her head off.
it's a rodent, man, with wings. Like, who would be afraid of that?
Unbelievable.
Well, I know Batman has a fear of bats, but
There you go.
You
Yeah.
don't have enough hair to really understand, okay? Because that's what it comes down to at this point, is when you have the hair
Oh, that's
and
disgusting.
you know it's going to get stuck in your hair.
Nope.
That's like the worst fear when it comes to bats.
I did have a beard, I think, at that time, though, so I could.
It's
Stuck in
not the
Jay's
same.
beard.
Yeah.
Bat beard.
Bat beard.
Well,
Like, nothing beats.
we have the bats here at the farm.
I wouldn't mind them being outside eating the
Yeah,
bugs.
I don't mind,
Just
yeah.
No, we
don't come
see
in the
them when we
house.
have campfires and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But in the house, I can't imagine that.
We haven't had.
I don't
one
even know
in
how
there.
it got
we
in.
haven't.
They're
Oh,
so
enough
small
I
that they can easily
had
just
them
crawl
around.
into
They
certain
are
areas,
small.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure we had that hole in the kitchen at that time too. So
Gracie,
You never know.
our daughter left the basement door open this summer, and we had a squirrel in the house for a chipmunk. Sorry, in the basement for. It took like 2 days to get him out. I was certain. I was like, oh man, it was in the evening. She left it out. I'm like, if we were gonna get a bat, now's the time. And I was terrified, but we didn't get one. So we got lucky so far. We'll knock on wood and say that we haven't had one in the house. But
so I will tell us one story there. When we first were doing the renovations before we even moved in, you remember the story of the little chipmunk in Hannah's room? Well, we had some friends over renovating. Anyways, we had some friends over
Yeah.
renovating. I was having at the time hip issues, so I had a cane, some crutches. And so I walked into Hannah's room, and there was this chipmunk right next to the register. And so I was like, well, I don't want it to be in here, and I don't want it to go into the duct work and all that. So I ended up reaching over with my cane or my crutch,
Your crutch.
and I whack, and I got it. So
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
You
And
were
I don't like
you were that
killing
fast?
things that I don't have to.
Yeah.
But when it comes to my house or my gardens or even my
Yeah.
chickens
Yeah.
or whatever,
Oh, certain
you got to do what
Yeah.
you got to do sometimes. So.
Oh,
Oh.
and yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I wanted to add this because I did a post on our Facebook page about a month ago, and it was just a small little post. Not a lot of people, commented on it or whatever, but it was about wolf spiders. Wolf spiders are really, really large.
Yeah, they're
And-
nasty.
Well, hey, yeah, I know, but
I know exactly where you're going with this. And
They-
then
That do not need to be
it
anywhere
comes
near the
down to
house.
the hair. That's why I
That's disgusting.
so wolf spiders are something you're going to see in your firewood, in your barn, or wherever, and they are very large, and they're not poisonous. They're not brown recluses. We don't have those here. We don't have
No.
poisonous spiders.
They can be
We have the
anywhere
brown
from
recluse.
like
What's that?
We have the very close.
Not,
no.
Well,
not here.
down Kingston we did.
Kingston, yeah, we're a little bit north here. We're okay, but it's we don't have them. But we do have wolf spiders, and they're quite large. Like, they can get really big.
Oh,
Yeah,
But we
quite large.
we have them in the barn, and they make cobwebs and stuff. And Jenny hates it, but you know what? Like, it catches so many insects and
Yeah.
flies. Like, they are crucial to keeping that down, especially in that May time frame of year. So
as long as I don't
Yeah.
see it. Like I
Just
I
if
pretend
you
the cobwebs are because
we
Yeah.
had that one on our chicken door. Remember that size of that thing?
Oh yeah, that was huge.
Some
Oh,
could be like the size of
man.
an
Yeah.
apple or
I
an
just think,
orange.
people think they're brown recluses. They're not. They're wolf spiders where we
Gracie's
live.
terrified right now.
And they're-
Just listening to the
They're,
conversation. She's like,
yeah, our
"Wow."
daughter's looking. She's like, I hate spiders. You don't like spiders either, eh? But yeah, so the thing is, like, I think they're important, and I leave them in the barn. I let the cobwebs be there.
Yeah.
I mean, it is.
I leave them in the barn too,
Yeah.
except for if I see them.
I don't kill any
No,
spiders.
I don't
unless
kill
we
them
need the
either.
rain. That's the only time I kill them.
Yeah, I never kill them. Pick them up, put them outside or whatever if they're in the house.
I only kill them because Kendra wants me to
Yeah.
kill them. So
Jenny-
Because we don't want them in our hair.
Because they'll also take care of the moths that are in the house, and they'll
Oh.
take
Yeah.
care of other things. So.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we covered most of it. Is there any other questions? Like, I'll put it out to you guys that are watching on that you wanted to touch base on. Is there questions for us in our experiences that with the different types of setups
Yeah.
we have that you'd like to ask us on predators or pests or insects or whatnot?
Or maybe like if you have like a topic idea that you might think like, can you talk about this? Do you have experience dealing
Yeah.
with this? That's something we can definitely do as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting living in the country. Like, I mean, we don't have all this stuff happening all the time, but they do happen like here and there. So like we've been in the country for what, 6-7 years now? 6 years?
So this is our seventh winter.
7th winter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like, yeah, it might seem like, wow, you guys have gone through a lot and your house must be like all holes. It's not the case. Things just come in cycles, and I just think that
Adds a bit of spice to your
it
life.
definitely
Yeah.
adds spice to the life, and
Yeah.
yeah, you definitely grow from it. So it's interesting. Keeps your life interesting.
Yeah.
New house or old house, like our cottage is basically a brand new
Mm-hmm.
house, and we still have some of the similar issues where we
Ladybugs.
have ladybugs, the flies.
Yeah.
There's definitely mice, and we have a resident snake that just kind of chills out and
Around the house, yeah.
around the house and eats stuff. And I just hope that my renters don't kill it because it does its job.
Has its purpose. Yeah,
Yeah.
like we have a snake. Well, we have a few snakes. Not in the house, thankfully.
Not yet. Anyways.
But like I'd be outside working in the greenhouse, and I'd get like these little gardener snakes. 2 of them would come, and I'd be
Yeah.
planting my tomatoes, and they'd just come and they'd stick their little tongue out, and I just
Yeah.
keep working. Eventually, he wanders away, but he keeps the mice down and all that.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
I don't mind them at all.
Exactly.
They
we
don't
we
bother
try
me.
and be like, we take the approach of low impact, like really, like nature knows what it's doing.
Yeah.
We try and
That's
be as
right.
low impact as possible until it affects us, right? Like 7 nights and no sleep, that was enough for the raccoon. But You know, and the coyotes were, you know, we have that resident coyote, the three-legged guy. He learned his lesson, obviously, and he doesn't bother the rest of our livestock anymore, and we see him from time to time. But if you get rid of him, something else will move in.
That's right.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, you know, we got rid of the bear. What has moved in is my question, you know, because the bear left, and then Jenny started seeing those big wolf prints. So did that move in? Like,
Yeah, so
so
you
we
gotta be
try and stay
cautious,
low
right?
impact and educate ourselves as best as possible to not encourage the
Yeah.
predators or the pests or the insects.
Because oftentimes it's always something bigger and worse than what you got
Usually.
rid of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everything has it's a trickling effect.
Yeah.
So there's actually a really good movie on Netflix in regards to this, and it was a couple who took over a farm, and you know they were running into certain predator issues.
Oh,
They-
them fellers.
Yeah,
Yeah,
was it
yeah.
Little Big Farm or something.
I don't know.
I
but
wanted
it
to
sounds
see
like
that,
that,
but I
yeah.
haven't seen
it
it
seemed
yet.
like whatever they did was going south.
Yeah, so you know,
Yeah.
like
Wow.
all of a sudden, so they would try to take something away because let's say it was the chickens, they had a fox coming in for the chickens. Well, then they got something to come and get the fox, but then you know the coyotes come in, or it was just one thing after another where. You know, they try to fix the problem with, all of a sudden they put ducks out to try and fix the problem with all the snails, and
Yeah.
like it was just crazy, all the stuff that they were doing.
Wow.
And it was just trickling back, and it would just create another issue,
Another
and
issue.
then another issue, another issue. And finally they realized that by just allowing what's naturally there to happen, like it basically solved all the issues, right? So instead of bringing something in,
The owls moved in.
the owls
Yeah.
moved. So then they put what was it, houses to attract the natural owls that would come in. They would get rid of the moles and the snails and the whatever. Like so, it was really neat to see that, and they did an excellent job at actually showing that entire
Wow.
process, yeah, from start to finish, and it blew my mind to see like just how much one little thing of change
Yeah, can have such a
can
big effect.
Yeah, it can affect the farm.
Wow.
So that and like we didn't.
Well, we had a neighbor down the road who's from the city, and he asked me, you know, he said, "Oh, I heard the coyotes," and him and his wife were scared to go outside, and he says, "Oh, can you shoot them?" And I flat out said, "No, like no, I can't." Because that's a stupid response.
Yeah.
You need to educate yourself. Like you're a guest in this part of the world. You know what I mean? Like you're coming out to your cabin, your cottage, your farm, or whatever. I mean, you're just caretaking that land. It doesn't matter what you do on there. You can kill every animal you can think of. Well, in a month you'll have a whole slew of new animals showing up. So I think you need to learn to work with it because trying to fight against it's not going to work.
Yeah.
It's just going to be an exercise in frustration, and that's something I think that we've learned that you can't just get rid of everything
Yeah.
because
No.
you just
I
have
mean,
to.
looking at predators, pests, and insects, I'm like, they're not going to go away.
Nope.
We just
Yeah.
got to learn how to adapt and
That's
live
right.
with them, really.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I can find the name of that movie, anyways, it's on
Probably
Netflix
is
for
Little
sure.
Big Farm.
I think it's Littlest Big Farm or something like that. Anyways, that is like the perfect example, and that's
Yeah.
something that's really, really good to watch and just see how it evolved.
Yeah.
Because it will definitely change the way you think about things. 'Cause
Yeah.
I know that's now our biggest thing is like, hey, when we hear the coyotes, it's like, well, you take them out, then this problem's gonna come, and you evaluate so differently after watching that and seeing that the full. You're basically seeing the full picture.
Wow.
So.
Yeah. Same as the weasel. I'm gonna call him Frank because I see him often enough. I feel like I need to name him.
We
I don't wanna
actually had
get rid
a.
of
I've seen them too, actually.
We've
the other
actually
day.
had a down at. We were
The
staying
parents'
with his
place there.
parents for a little while before we bought our home, and we were looking for a place, and they had a grouse or a pheasant.
Okay, yeah.
Partridge.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so we named him Frank because he was always around, and
Yeah.
he was he
Oh, and they're
became
very
Yeah.
they're very vocal and will tell you when you're near them.
yeah.
They do that big thumping.
Oh man,
their
it freaked
feathers,
me
right?
out one day. I was going for a walk, and all I heard was like that, but it was like I looked back and it was like chasing me.
Oh really?
I almost died. I couldn't. Anyway. I was thankful that it stopped, but
Try
yeah.
being horseback, and all of a sudden they go off. You get too close to them, and they don't give you a warning. They just fly off, and the horses are like, "Oh my goodness!"
They sound like generators starting up.
They do, or like a
Yeah.
chainsaw or something.
But yeah.
But I think we can probably end it on the note that Jenny just
so.
said. Like, just evaluate your situation and really, look at, do you really need to get rid of this problem? Can you learn to live with it? What can you do to adapt yourself? Because I think that is basically what we've all kind of come to the conclusion to. Like,
Dog, cat,
a dog, a cat, yeah.
electric fence.
There you go. There's your 3 tips to take home today. Anyways, we hope that we'll see you on our next live, which will be next Thursday at 7 p.m. And we'll let you know what the topic is then. But thanks for joining us tonight.
Appreciate it.
Take care. Thank you.
I don't know how to turn that off.
Someone's got to turn it off.
Someone's got to get up. It's all good.
Where do you turn it off?
6 here. I have to take this off.
I couldn't even